This is your personal phone, right?
Yeah. You have to put direct.
It's calling direct. What should I do? Is this WhatsApp?
This is WhatsApp.
This is WhatsApp. Is it not? Is
Hello.
it indirect?
Sound check 1 2 3. Hello, hello. Sound check 1 2 3. Sound check 1 2 3. Hello, hello. Sound check 1 2 3. Hello, hello.
Hello, Ambassador.
Sound check 1 2 3. Hello.
I'm Nana. I'm Nana. trying to call the. I'm calling this one. I'm calling this. Professor Marcel.
He's here.
He's here. I'm calling this one. This one.
David Beard?
But then I.
He's here.
No.
Where? This, who is the gentleman with the beard in the corner?
the people in this room.
Je crois que nous pouvons commencer notre réunion d'aujourd'hui. Votre Excellence, Cheikh Hasina, Premier ministre du Bangladesh, Mesdames, Messieurs les chefs d'État et de gouvernement, Mesdames, Messieurs les ministres, Mesdames, Messieurs les représentants des observateurs, des entités des Nations Unies et d'autres organisations intergouvernementales accréditées et de la société civile, Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, je déclare ouverte la 4e table ronde thématique de haut niveau de la 5e conférence des Nations Unies sur les pays les moins avancés, sur le thème « Renforcer la participation des pays les moins avancés au commerce international et à l'intégration régionale ». Je tiens tout d'abord à vous souhaiter la bienvenue à toutes et à tous à cette table ronde thématique de haut niveau. Je suis honoré d'être votre coprésident aux côtés de son Excellence Sheikh Hasina, Premier ministre du Bangladesh. Le résumé de notre débat d'aujourd'hui sera présenté à la séance plénière de clôture de la conférence qui se tiendra le jeudi 9 mars dans l'après-midi. Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, avant de commencer, j'aimerais dire quelques mots sur le thème dont nous sommes saisis aujourd'hui. Excellences, Mesdames les représentantes, Messieurs les représentants, Mesdames et Messieurs, l'agenda 2030 pour le développement durable définit le commerce international comme un moteur de la croissance économique inclusive et de la réduction de la pauvreté qui contribue à la promotion du développement durable. Le programme d'action de Doha reconnaît qu'en dépit de l'expansion massive du commerce et des investissements au cours des dernières décennies, les pays les moins avancés sont confrontés à des défis considérables pour s'intégrer efficacement dans les systèmes commerciaux mondiaux et pour bénéficier des opportunités offertes par le commerce international et la chaîne de valeur mondiale. Près de 8 ans après le début de la mise en œuvre des objectifs du développement durable, des préoccupations légitimes subsistent, en particulier pour les pays les moins avancés. Les pays les moins avancés restent à marge des flux commerciaux mondiaux et des chaînes de valeur mondiales et voient l'écart se creuser avec les économies avancées et les marchés émergents. La part des pays moins avancés dans les exportations de marchandises est restée stable à environ 1% au cours de la dernière décennie. Pour les exportations de services commerciaux, la part des paiements dans le commerce mondial a oscillé autour de 0,7% au cours de la dernière décennie. Ces chiffres montrent clairement que l'objectif de l'ODD, consistant à doubler la part des exportations mondiales des pays les moins avancés d'ici 2020 par rapport à 2011, objectif de 2%, est loin d'être atteint. Le déficit commercial global des paiements a atteint un nouveau record en 2021. Si la part des produits primaires dans les exportations totales des paiements continue à diminuer, la plupart des paiements sont restés des exportateurs de produits primaires. En 2018-2020, les produits de base représentaient encore 63% des exportations totales des marchandises et des paiements. Seuls une poignée d'entre eux se sont aventurés dans l'industrie manufacturière et ce, au plus bas de la chaîne de valeur. Ces faits et chiffres démontrent que la transformation structurelle ne s'installe pas dans les paiements et que ces derniers doivent encore s'intégrer au système commercial mondial. Pour le cas du Burundi, le Burundi souhaite faire observer que parmi les paiements, il y a aussi des États enclavés et qui sont doublement affectés par leur situation géographique, ne leur permettant pas de tirer pleinement parti du potentiel du commerce international. À cet égard, le Burundi étant un des pays qui n'ont pas accès à la mer, encourage la coopération sud-sud et la signature des accords commerciaux régionaux pour relever certains défis posés au paiement par le système international commercial. C'est ainsi que le Burundi a adhéré au projet de construction d'un chemin de fer reliant la Tanzanie, le Burundi et la RDC, a organisé des foires régionales au niveau des pays de l'Afrique de l'Est pour la publicité des produits commerciaux des pays membres. C'est ici que je fais un mot liminaire et je vous remercie. Maintenant, je cède la parole à la coprésidente Son Excellence Sheikh Hasina, Première ministre du Bangladesh. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and very good morning to you all. I am delighted to chair this high-level thematic co-chair this high-level thematic roundtable discussion on enhancing the participation of least developed countries in international trade and regional integration. Trade will continue to remain a key driver of development for graduating and graduated LDCs. You should perhaps recall that the Istanbul Programme of Action aspire to double the LDC's trade share. However, their share of trade still remains as low as 1%. To be competitive in the global market, LDCs must focus on enhancing their trade-related infrastructure, building productive capacity, and utilizing preferential market access. For achieving these objectives, LDCs require support and investment for connectivity, human capital, and trade finance and technology transfer. My government has placed significant emphasis on improving national and cross-border connectivity by constructing a multimodal transport system. It will reduce costs, enhance efficiency, and promote regional and international trade. We are also implementing various initiatives aimed at developing skills, increasing productivity, improving intellectual property, and enhancing our competitiveness. Our government's policy is to engage the private sector to participate in national development. Working hand in hand, we have so far brought the country to the present stage of LDC graduation. Our near-term priority is to ensure smooth and sustainable graduation. Graduating LDCs need extension of LDC-specific support measures, such as preferential market access and the TRIPS waiver for a certain period after graduation. The LDC group in WTO has already placed its proposals on these issues. Those proposals should be seriously considered by the international community, especially given the challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic and the war in Ukraine. It is clear that we need to redouble our efforts to achieve the targets that we have set for ourselves in the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and in the Doha Program of Action. This requires concerted efforts at national, regional, and global levels. I hope that this roundtable session would assess the state of play of international support measures against the challenges that LDC are currently facing. Our approach and commitments should be pragmatic, realistic, and well-designed to enhance LDC's productive capacity. I hope our deliberations will positively contribute towards achieving targets we have set for ourselves in the Doha Program of Action. I thank you all.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente, de vos observations. Nous allons maintenant entendre le discours de notre orateur principal. J'ai l'honneur d'inviter M. Xiangcheng Zhang, directeur général adjoint de l'Organisation mondiale du commerce, à prendre la parole.
Mr. Honorable President, Madam Honorable Prime Minister, Excellencies, I'm very pleased to be here today in Doha. Doha is an important place for me. 22 years ago, I was here to assist my then Minister of China to sign the protocol of China's accession to the World Trade Organization. And yesterday, I had the opportunity to meet Mr. Ismail Kamel Qatar, the minister, who moderated the accession signing ceremony for China's accession. And we had a good chat, and we all recognize the historical moment 22 years ago that has brought hope for a better future for over 1 billion people living in China and beyond. Today, China is the world's top trading nation and the top destination for LDC exports. And here in Doha, we are witnessing another historical moment for the international community, a moment that is bringing hopes for close to 1 billion people living in LDCs with the Doha Program of Actions for LDCs for the next decade. And trade is one of the main elements of the DPOA. LDC integration into global economy is our shared objective. We in the WTO, through our members, have taken several steps in response to LDC trade priorities in the area of market access. We have offered duty-free, quota-free market access to boost LDC exports. We have set guidelines for simple rules of origin to help LDCs fully realize them. We have stepped up our efforts to help LDCs improve participation in service trade. We have also ensured that LDCs get the necessary time and support to integrate WTO rules. For example, WTO members offered longer time to LDCs to implement the WTO agreement on trade-related aspects of intellectual property. They have until 2034 to do so. We have also ensured that LDCs have more time to provide agricultural export subsidies. They have until 2030 to do so. And we have ensured that LDCs get the time and support they need to fully implement the WTO Trade Facilitation Agreement with the benefits that it brings in terms of lower trade costs and the simplified custom procedures. Our Aid for Trade initiative helps to build LDC capacity to trade. Today, LDCs are the second largest Aid for Trade recipient, and the new 2023 to 2024 Aid for Trade Work Program offers an opportunity for building stronger partnerships for food security, digital connectivity, and mainstreaming trade. So, LDC trade interests have always been at the forefront of WTO. From the first WTO's Ministerial Conference in 1996 to the 12th one last year, and LDC priorities have taken central stage in the MC12 outcome document. We have done a lot, yet we cannot rest on our laurels. LDC trade share remains below 1%. LDCs still export a handful of products to a handful of markets, and LDC firms remain vulnerable to external shocks. We clearly saw it with trade disruptions due to the COVID-19. Even today, LDC service exports have not fully recovered, growing at half of growth rate of the rest of the world. And the global trading landscape keeps moving fast. Digital trade is changing consumption patterns faster than ever before. Services are driving economic growth. Actions on climate are looming large. Now is the time to boost LDC trade integration, not isolation. And now is the time to have a fresh perspective. LDCs have been participating in global trade talks on a defensive side. This is understandable. Securing defensive interests brings immediate comfort. However, for quite some time, we have taken eyes off the ball on the offensive side, and that's because it's much tougher to clearly see our offensive interests, those that will bring long-term benefits. So we need to keep an eye on all our interests, defensive and offensive. And WTO is a unique place to do so. First, it offers a level playing field for all members, big or small. We negotiated outcomes confirm that. Second, it gives a voice to all its members. Only in the WTO, LDCs can play a key role in shaping global trade rules, the rules that respond to LDC's interests. Third, it allows the global trade governors to involve as members see fit. Take the amendment to the TRIPS agreement, for example. WTO members realize that the system of compulsory licensing for domestic use was not sufficient, so they came up with a solution to allow compulsory licensing for export of pharmaceuticals. And recently, they also ensured a flexibility to facilitate COVID-19 vaccine production. So we need to keep updating the WTO rulebook, and LDCs have an important role to play, simply because lack of new trade rules in the WTO will push trade talks elsewhere, and LDCs will be the first to be impacted as they will have less scope to influence them. Many just do not realize what a fair referee WTO is. And I'm very pleased to witness the commitment of LDC delegations to strengthening the WTO and to exploring forward-looking trade priorities. We have seen active participation of LDC delegations in Geneva in a development retreat on WTO reform last month. And together with UN OHS, we have also seen 100 capital-based trade officials brainstorming on LDC trade priorities for the next decade as part of the LDC 5 regional consultation in Addis and Sinrim. I encourage all LDCs to keep strengthening their trade capacity, to have more dialogues with the private sector, and to define forward-looking trade priorities, defensive and offensive. And I firmly believe that it will help all LDCs to become more active players in global trade in the next decade. And we are here to support you in any way we can. Thank you.
Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Directeur général de l'Organisation mondiale du commerce, de votre déclaration. Nous allons maintenant entendre les interventions de nos invités. À présent, je donne la parole à Monsieur, Son Excellence, Monsieur Pan Sarasak, ministre du Commerce du Cambodge.
Merci. Excellency Prime Ministers of Bangladesh, Excellency President of the Republic of Burundi, distinguished panelists, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Very good morning to you all. First and foremost, I would like to extend my high appreciations to the government of Qatar for the excellent arrangements and warm hospitalities extended to me and the Cambodian delegations during our stay in these beautiful cities of Doha. On behalf of the Royal Government of Cambodia and on my own behalf, it is my great honor to attend this important roundtable on enhancing the participations of LDCs in international trade and regional integrations. I would like to begin by saying that since Cambodia joined the Associations of Southeast Asia Nations, which are short for ASEAN, in 1999 and WTO in 2004, Cambodia has belonged to a regional bloc and the multilateral trading systems and where economic integrations is at the heart of our nations. Since then, we have achieved significant growth in terms of economy, human and institutional capacity, and per capita income. Cambodia, one of the LDCs, has gained a lot of benefits and flexibilities under the WTO framework provided to LDCs, including preferential market access, special and differential treatment, and other international trade-related measures adopted by the WTO's Ministerial Conference with the aims to assist LDCs to fully integrate in the multilateral trading systems as well as the regional and global economy. Following this, Cambodia has been making great strides through playing a very active role in regional and global trade integrations. I would like to say that on January 30th and 31st this year, the WTO and the UN Office of the High Representative of the least developed countries, landlocked developing countries, and small island developing states, in cooperation with enhanced integrated frameworks and UN regional economic commissions, have organized regional consultations on LDC 5 for LDCs in Asia Pacific, co-hosted by Cambodia in Siem Reap. The regional consultation discussed 5 main key topics, such as 1. The trade elements of Doha Program of Actions, 2. Digital trade, 3. Regional integrations, 4. Trade capacity, and 5. Smooth transitions after graduation from LDC status. These are the essential elements for all LDCs, especially for those on the path to graduations. Taking these opportunities, I would like to share Cambodia's experience with regional integrations efforts, which form an integral part of our long-term LDC's graduation strategies. As a member of ASEAN, Cambodia is in the ASEAN Free Trade Area. The ASEAN +1 Free Trade Agreements, FTAs, with China, India, Japan, Republic of Korea, Australia, and New Zealand. Cambodia is also a party of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, we call ASEP, which is the biggest regional FTAs in the world. Furthermore, bilateral trade agreement between Cambodia and China and between Cambodia and the Republic of Korea were signed and have entered into force recently. Currently, Cambodia is negotiating an FTA with the United Arab Emirates and expected to be concluded and signed by next month in Phnom Penh. And Cambodia has envisaged to do more FTAs to secure best access for products made in Cambodia and attract more foreign direct investment to Cambodia. Cambodia regional and global integrations efforts is not an abrupt approach, but in fact it is a part of overarching government policies for boosting and sustaining the economic growth by promoting economic diversifications, and it is obviously linked to our long-term LDC's graduation strategies, as Cambodia met the criteria of LDC's graduation for the first time in 2021, according to the UN Committee on Development Policy. Cambodia has to fulfill the criteria again in triennial review in 2024 to be eligible for graduating from LDC status. While meeting the graduation criteria is a major achievement, graduating LDCs will still face major development and trade challenges resulting from the loss of trade-related international technical assistance and support measures, as well as erosions of trade preferences. Therefore, minimizing the negative impacts resulting from the removal of these technical assistance and support measures are critical essentials to secure a smooth transition from LDCs and, more importantly, avoid falling back into LDC's category. In order to tackle those challenges, may I say the extensions of SNDT, Special Differential Treatment, LDC-specific technical assistance, and capacities building programs and unilateral trade preferences should be ensured for graduating LDCs. I would like to recall that the Doha Program of Actions for LDCs for decades 2022 and 2031 reiterates the convictions that no country graduating from LDC's category should have its development progress disrupted or reversed and ensure that no graduating LDCs has its special and differential treatment measures and exemptions reduced abruptly. More specifically, this is based on the UN General Assembly resolutions of 59/209 of 2004 on smooth transition strategies for countries graduating from the list of LDCs, and the General Assembly's resolution 7/221 of 2021 on smooth transition for countries graduating from the list of LDCs. These two resolutions invite all other members of the WTO to consider extending to graduated countries the existing special and differential treatments, measures, and exemptions available to LDCs for a period appropriate to the development situations of the country. Furthermore, the resolutions also invite LDCs trading partners to establish procedures for extending or phasing out preferential market access and LDC-specific funds of the UN systems to continue providing technical assistance to graduated LDCs over a certain period. Aligning with the resolutions of the UN General Assemblies and the Doha Programs of Actions, the least developed countries group, with respect to the multilateral trade negotiation and WTOs, circulated a proposal for draft ministerial decisions on trade-related challenges of the LDCs and way forward, to call on members to extend LDC-specific support measures to graduating LDCs for periods of 12 years after the entries into force of decisions of UN General Assembly to exclude the members from LDCs categories. The proposal also invites the preferential granting members to establish procedures for extending and gradually phasing out their preferential market access scheme over periods of 12 years after LDC's graduations. Apart from the extension of these support measures, development partners are also able to play a crucial role in integrating graduations and smooth transition strategies into graduating LDC's national development and aid programs before and after graduations. I would like to end my interventions here, and I would like to draw your attention that the extensions of these support measures under multilateral trading systems and supports from development partners, which I have mentioned earlier, will not only respond to UN General Assembly resolutions and the Doha Programs of Action, but also respond to the need of smooth transitions of graduating countries. I wish this roundtable and conference success and fruitful deliberations. Merci, monsieur. Merci. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Ministre, de votre déclaration. À présent, j'invite Madame Kitty van der Heyden, vice-ministre de la coopération internationale des Pays-Bas.
Merci bien, Monsieur le Président. Excellencies, Prime Minister of Bangladesh, President of Burundi, distinguished keynote speaker, Deputy Director General of WTO, and friends and fellow panelists. It's an honor and a pleasure for me to be here because I believe in the power of trade. I believe in the power of trade to boost innovation, to create jobs, and to tackle inequalities. And actually, that's how the Netherlands grew to who we are. It's because of trade. And I remember one president of a big country coming to visit my relatively small country, and it said, the Netherlands, small country, big footprint. Because we may be small in landmass, but we had a big, and still have, a big trading ambition, and that's how we grew. And I wish that we could do the same for the LDCs, because the statistics that were just mentioned of the LDCs being just 1% of global trade, clearly we have to do better if we are to boost growth, tackle inequalities, and create jobs. We also know that digital trade has that same potential to boost innovation, to create jobs, and to tackle inequalities. And, you know, if you look at the statistics that IFC put forward, the internet economy could grow the economies of Africa, just Africa, by 180 billion alone by 2025. 2025, that's just 2.5 years from now, 180 billion US dollars. The key challenge is then making sure that if we grow a digital economy, if we grow new technologies, that creates value for all countries, and within countries, for all people. And right now, that simply isn't the case. According to the UN, about half of the world's population has little, if any, access to internet. In LDCs, about 27% of people are online. And while a lot of people in the rich, high-income countries now shop online, in LDCs that drops to about 2%. Now, we all know that trade took a major hit because of COVID. This was mentioned before. But there was one silver lining to COVID. I think that's the only one, because quite frankly, I see very few others. And that is that we learned to communicate by digital means, and that the digital trade and digital commerce really grew. But in a world where economic development becomes more dependent on digital technologies, a deepening digital divide then also means that it impedes human development. That's why we have to pursue digital policies that empower people, that empower business, but that also create a human-centered, sustainable, and more prosperous digital future for all. We therefore need to focus on policies that create digital skills, particularly for young people, because tomorrow's markets will be very different than today's markets, and that we create adequate regulatory frameworks. The international trade rules will play an absolutely key role in tackling these types of challenges and in bridging the digital divide. And I think it's absolutely crucial and urgent that we modernize the acquis of the WTO to make rapid technological development matched by the trade rules by which we all have to abide. And for digital trade to flourish, for that opportunity for developing countries to become part and parcel of a growing ecosystem of trade, citizens and consumers will need to trust online markets. And that's where WTO, again, comes in, particularly its joint statement initiative on e-commerce. Now, we know that good progress is being made, and things that seem so simple, such as the recognition of digital contracts, electronic signatures, they may seem trivial, but the legal effect of making sure that everyone understands what that means and how it is to be respected, it's a vital condition for digital trade to thrive. It's also important that we continue negotiations on some of the other relevant topics, like data flows, privacy, and a minimum level of online consumer protection. By ensuring digital market access, we open up new sectors, we create new opportunities for digital entrepreneurs. And we know that there are further opportunities in unlocking the economic potential of small business outside of the traditional flow of goods and services, by giving them easier and cheaper access to global markets so that they can sell their products or digital services through e-commerce. Now, this holds particular promises for SMEs, which are the backbone of the economy in many LDCs, but it's also incredibly important for women. Now, all of us here have been very busy with this conference here in Doha. I don't know who saw the opening speech of His Excellency the Secretary General yesterday at the Commission on the Status of Women, and what he said there. And he mentioned that we are, ladies and gentlemen, I find this a shocking statistics, we are 300 years away of gender equality. 300 years away of gender equality in health, in education, in trade, in every aspect of life. We can and must do better for women in LDCs and women elsewhere if we are to keep the world of the SDGs and a life in dignity for everyone within reach. That's why we focus a lot on inclusive digitalization, including for women, through capacity building and technical assistance. Let me name a few of our initiatives. Under the WTO Aid for Trade umbrella, we address hindrances to LDCs to face, the hindrances LDCs face to express their trade needs in development strategies, and how they participate in global digital trade. We are not the sixth economy of the world, but we are the sixth donor to the WTO Aid for Trade umbrella. And together with UNCTAD, we are working on the e-trade readiness assessments, which contribute to capacity building in LDCs in the field of digital trade and e-commerce. And it's clear what, as the name says, that the readiness assessments, they map a country's e-commerce ecosystems. They provide insight in priority areas for actions, and they are then followed up by policy recommendations and an implementation process. And furthermore, we work with ITC through a trust fund that helps SMEs in digital technologies and agribusiness so that they become more competitive and can simply do better. So that they enter successfully in regional and international markets. They generate revenue, they attract foreign direct investment, they create jobs, and they have a sustainable impact on the entire ecosystem in a country. And it's now more than ever important that we do this, and that we do this in the right way. It's not just any trade that matters. It is trade in tomorrow's economy, and tomorrow's economy will not be brown, and it will not be grey, it will be green, and it will be digital. And if we are to give not just LDCs, but particularly young people in LDCs, the chance for a better future, that's where our skill development needs to take place. And that's why we have another example for the UNCTAD's E-Trade for Women initiative, which aims to inspire tech women around the world and support them in capacity building and networking for peer learning. So one more statistic. In the IFC 2021 report, it states that closing the gender gap by 2025 could add no less than $14.5 billion to the value of the e-commerce market in Africa by 2030. There simply is a strong business case to facilitate women's access to digitalization and women's engagement in the digital trade. So if you don't do it because you believe that women have the right for equal access, then you should do it because it's simply economically rational. It makes good business sense to do it. Now, needless to say, we need to do a lot more. We need to invest more in LDCs, in women, in skills for young people, and make sure that we leave no one behind. I'm looking forward to have a discussion with all of you. There is a lot of gathered knowledge around this table. We need to make sure we mobilize that, and we need to make sure that those people that are most in need, that we aim to serve with these types of programs, have full access to capacity building and support. So we grow economies, we tackle inequalities, we boost innovation and create jobs for tomorrow's economy. Thank you so much, Mr. President.
Merci beaucoup, Madame Kitty, vice-ministre de la coopération internationale des Pays-Bas. À présent, j'invite Monsieur Pedro Manuel Moreno, Deputy Secretary General of SNICED, à présenter sa déclaration.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Son Excellence, le Président de la République du Burundi, Your Excellency, Prime Minister of Bangladesh, dear panelists and discussants, Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, dear friends. The United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, UNCTAD, and the LDCs share a common origin, our inaugural ministerial conference of 1964, where the question of the less developed countries in the world was first raised. In our 1964 declaration, it reads, UNCTAD member states agree that special attention must be paid to the less developed among the developing countries as an effective means of ensuring sustained growth with equitable opportunity for each developing country. 7 years later, as fruits of these efforts, the LDC category was formally created, including specific provisions on the global trade arena. It is then no coincidence that the LDC project started within a general conference on trade and development. Almost by definition, to be least developed is to be least integrated to global trade. And conversely, to enhance LDC participation in international trade is perhaps the oldest and surest way to support LDCs in their long-drawn quests for sustainable development. Sadly, LDCs are more marginalized in world trade today than when the LDC category was established 50 years ago. Together, the 46 LDCs barely count for 1%, as the Vice Minister reminded us, of world trade. Furthermore, even when LDCs trade, their exports tend to be severely concentrated in a few primary commodities. Lack of industrial capacities and low value addition mean that in 2021, LDCs continue to depend on commodities for more than 2/3 of their exports. Excellencies, reversing the marginalization of LDCs in the global economy requires building stronger productive capacities. This is a gigantic task, made even more difficult by the extremely challenging context we find ourselves in. We live, as the UN Secretary General says, in a perfect storm of crises marked by climate change, pandemics, debt distress, and armed conflict. To continue with the metaphor, of all countries in the world, LDCs lack the most shelter to weather the ongoing storm. The next decade of action will be critical for LDCs. LDCs, together with the international community, must take decisive action and bold policy steps. In this context, let me briefly highlight 8 key policy messages. First, it is urgent that we renew, expand, and refine international support measures in favor of LDCs. This is a major step for the international community to address their core vulnerabilities and development challenges in the 21st century. Second, LDCs, perhaps more than any group of countries in the world, need a strong multilateral trading system with a strong WTO at its center, as you also said. And when I say multilateral, I mean multilateral, not plurilateral, not bilateral, multilateral. Third, strengthening regional trade is a major opportunity for LDCs. LDC exports to nearby markets typically have higher value added and higher technological content than those to faraway markets. ASEAN, the RCEP, the AFCFTA are huge opportunities for green structural transformation in LDCs. Fourth, environmental trade-related policies have risen 15-fold between 2009 and 2020. While this is overall very positive for the world, it poses a major challenge for LDCs, given their limited institutional capacities in both their public and private sectors. LDC partners should be aware of the unintended adverse side effects of some of these policies and address them accordingly. Fifth, the worldwide transition to a low-carbon economy is likely to bring the potential for higher exports by LDCs, since many of them have reserves of strategic minerals that will be increasingly demanded in that process: lithium, platinum, cobalt, rare earths, silver, copper, etc. However, it is crucial to avoid that this rising demand leads to the aggravation of the commodity dependence. This would happen if the relevant natural resources were exported as unprocessed goods, reproducing traditional patterns of integration of most LDCs into the world economy. The low-carbon transition is a historic opportunity to avoid repeating the errors of the past. Sixth, the emergence of the digital economy is another mega-trend that offers challenges as well as opportunities for LDCs. At present, LDCs are largely being bypassed by the expansion of e-commerce and the intensification of trade in services enabled by information and communication technologies. This is due to their glaring infrastructural gaps vis-à-vis more advanced economies and their reduced productive capacities in the internationally more dynamic sectors. Seventh, to seize these opportunities, LDCs must invest heavily in their infrastructure, upgrade their productive structures, and build their skills and human resources. This requires massive finance commitments, which must come mostly from abroad, especially from developing finance institutions. That said, so far, the export of commodities, especially minerals, has been a major channel of illicit financial outflows from LDCs. So it is of utmost urgency to stem this leakage of resources. Being successful in this endeavor requires decisive fair international tax laws and international cooperation to tackle illicit flows. And eighth, finally, we at UNCTAD have repeatedly called for more flexible rules of origin to substantially boost LDC exports. There are several measures that LDC trade partners can take to bolster LDC exports in the short run and to raise preference utilization rates. Your Excellencies, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, as the old saying goes, the real problem is not having problems. The real problem is not having options. LDCs face an extremely difficult environment, but each of us must feel empowered by the recognition that there is much that we can do to support. Because there are many options available, what we need is the will to pursue them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Pedro Manuel. Maintenant, nous invitons M. Orareaga Marcelo, professeur d'économie à l'Université de Genève. Merci.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. It's an honor to be here. I will focus my intervention in an aspect that I believe should be part of the LDC's offensive strategy that WTO DG Zhang mentioned earlier. And that's digital trade, that has already been mentioned by my co-panelists here. So I have 7 minutes. I'm a university professor, so we're going to try the impossible. I will try to speak for less than 7 minutes. I will first focus on why I believe LDCs should engage in negotiations, multilateral negotiations, not plurilateral, as has been said before, on digital trade, and briefly discuss what can be done at the national level. So by digital trade, what do I mean? I mean trading goods that have been contracted or paid online, like when you buy on Alibaba, on Amazon, etc., on any online platform that we usually call e-commerce, as well as digital trading services. And I insist on digital trading services which are contracted, paid, and delivered online. So before the pandemic, digital trade in goods or e-commerce was growing 7 times faster than offline trade. And this difference in growth, no doubt, accelerated during the pandemic, offering a huge opportunity for LDCs and other trading partners in the world. Some may argue that this is still a very small share of total trade. Digital trading goods online, digital trading goods is a very small share of total trade that we observe. But nobody disputes that this is a very fast-growing share, which will create great opportunities in the very near future. In the area of digital trading service, the share is no longer small. UNTAD estimates that the share of digitally traded service in total service exports in 2018 was 50%, half of it. Half of it is digitally delivered business services, essentially. And a large share of these digital service, business services, are being exported by low-income countries. Why? Because they have a huge comparative advantage based on labor cost and skills. So what is different between, why is it that digital trade offers this important opportunity? What is different between digital trade and offline trade? There are 2 very important differences that have to do with the reduction of information frictions, information costs. The first one is search costs. As you all know, it's super easy to find buyers and sellers online all over the world, in the most remote areas. Very difficult to find, if you are an exporter of a particular good in Burundi, Mr. President, it will be very difficult to find a buyer in remote areas in Russia. Online, you can find it. The second information friction that online trade provides is the reduction in the cost of creating a reputation as a reliable exporter or as a reliable importer, one that pays on time. And the reduction of, why is that? Because you have on these platforms the possibility to give feedback on how well the exporter is, how well the importer is. You all know the power sellers, etc. So it's very easy to create that with a good track that gives a lot of visibility. And these reductions in costs are particularly important for those that reaching remote areas or creating a reputation is relatively difficult. So that will be in low-income countries in remote areas. In a study undertaken at the University of Geneva with some colleagues, we found that the cost of selling internationally is 30 to 40% higher in a country with a GDP per capita below $3,000 compared to a country with a GDP per capita above $30,000. So the cost of selling internationally offline, I'm talking offline, is much higher for low-income countries. And why is that? Because of infrastructure, difference in infrastructures, but also differences in accessing information and finding potential buyers and sellers. What we also found is that online, these differences vanish. And the cost, not only the difference between high and low income countries vanish, but also the cost of selling internationally gets reduced by 80%. That's a huge reduction in the cost of selling. More importantly, as has been mentioned before by the Vice Minister of Cooperation from the Netherlands, online trade makes international trade much more inclusive. I'm not going to talk about the gender dimension. There are many surveys showing that owners of electronic commerce around the world are, the share of women who are e-commerce owners is much larger than the share of women who are offline owners. But also, a very important aspect is that because it reduces the cost of accessing foreign markets, that makes that small firms, it's much easier for small firms to export. Looking at data from eBay, we found that above 90% of firms from Thailand, Malaysia, China, Peru, selling on eBay, 90% of those firms tend to be super small, and 90% export. That means every firm from those countries that is on eBay is exporting. If you look at what happens offline, you have this classic result that only 20%, in the best of worlds, of firms in the manufacturing sector offline are exporting. So who are these 20%? They are the largest, more productive, more skill-intensive firms. Those are the firms that export offline. What online markets do is allow all firms, the smallest, the unskill-intensive, those that we should care about. That's the problem that we have. The problem is not finding jobs for skilled workers. The problem is finding jobs for unskilled workers. That's where we should be putting the emphasis today. And that's what online exports, online trade, online platforms allow to do, allow those small firms intensive on unskilled workers to reach international markets, and that reduces income inequality by providing opportunities to those unskilled workers. I'm being way too long, so I'm going to go quickly through the fact that on digital services, there are the 6, if you look at another platform on digital services called Upwork, the 6 largest exporting countries on Upwork are not the US, not the EU, they are China. No, sorry, it's not China. Not the US, not EU, and not China. It's India, Philippines, Ukraine, Russia, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. You have an LDC country, which is among the largest exporters of digital services. So again, a huge comparative advantage in this area for some of these countries. Of course, you need a lot of, it's not so easy. You need to invest on skills. You need to invest on internet infrastructure. That's costly and needs to be done. It's not all paradise also on digital services. What we found that there is evidence of discrimination on these online platforms, on Upwork. You are much more likely to be hired on the online platform by a buyer of digital service in the US or in the EU if you are from a high-income country. And it's even better if you are from Harvard or MIT, okay? So there is still discrimination there. But what the Upwork does, the platform does, is that it allows you to create reputation much more easily than offline, because you get the feedback from the previous buyers of the work you have done. And as time goes, with the experience you acquire on the platform, the difference in probability of being hired coming from Harvard or coming from Universidad de Montevideo in Uruguay vanishes. Now, digital trade, no doubt, offers an opportunity, but there are also it's also what's happening is that there are new forms of trade protection that are happening today: localization requirements, market access limits, data privacy, consumer trust that can restrict the amount of digital trade. So these opportunities can be restricted by trade policies in the digital area that are coming up. The WTO has been very slow to take this challenge. And things have happened at the regional arena, but I don't have time to go into this. Now, in 2019, the WTO Joint Statement Initiative has started designing rules in the area of digital trade, and it offers a unique opportunity that LDCs should embrace. However, it's not a multilateral forum initiative as signaled by the Deputy Secretary General of UNCTAD. It's a plurilateral where only 88 members of the joint initiative, of the 88 members of the joint initiative, only 3 are LDCs. There are 35 LDCs which are members of the WTO. Less than 10% are part of this initiative in digital trade. This needs to change because the rules are being negotiated there, and that's going to affect the capacity to be able to export digital goods or digital services down the road. Moreover, there are issues that are not being talked in this initiative, and that I believe are in the interest, in this initiative or in regional initiatives, and that I believe are in the interest of LDCs. One is the issue of discrimination. We just talked about the discrimination of workers. The discrimination of workers in many dimensions is illegal in many countries, in the buying country and in the exporting country. This discrimination is illegal, but it's happening online. So what can we do to prevent that discrimination is important. It's something that could be in the interest of developing countries. Another thing that could be in the interest of exporting LDCs of these goods is bringing competition policy. Who captures the rent of these online platforms? Is it the exporting country? Is it the importing country? Or is it the platform? Well, when you know that Amazon charges up to 45% of the value of the sale, Upwork, that I just mentioned in digital trading services, charges 20% for jobs below $500, or Uber charges 25% of the value of the ride. There is a very large share that is being captured by these platforms. And this is because of the dominant positions they have, and the abuse of these dominant positions need to be curbed. You cannot do it at the national level. These are platforms that operate at the international level. So you can impose national competition policies in your country. It will not change anything. They will sell from another country, they will buy from another country, and they will still be charging from another country these 45%, 25%. So the only way you can tackle this abuse of dominant positions by these large platforms is not to forbid them to create your own platform. That's not going to help. The network externalities are important, but you need competition policies to bring down the shares that they charge. So what can be done at the national level? Contact my friends from UNCTAD, from ITC, from the World Bank. They all have digital advisory and trade assistance units that are ready to help with the type of legislations, with negotiations, etc., skills that are needed in the digital world. And I think it's something that you should all be embracing. Thank you very much.
Merci, Monsieur Marcelo. Pour les prochains orateurs, je voudrais vous demander de bien vouloir parler doucement pour permettre à l'interprétariat de bien traduire. Nous allons maintenant entendre les intervenantes et intervenants principaux. Et j'invite M. David Bia, président directeur général de Trademark East Africa, de présenter sa déclaration. Merci.
Buona cosa, Monsieur le Président. Excellencies, distinguished colleagues. As a leading aid for trade organization, Trademark Africa has over a decade of experience in delivering substantive verified results for LDCs at scale. With our roots in the East African community, we now have a mandate to deliver across Africa. Trademark works in collaboration with a range of development partners, LDCs in other countries in Africa, as well as organizations in the aid for trade space, and it's great to see a couple of our collaborating partners here on the panel today. So, what role can regional integration play to grow LDC trade? And how can regional and sub-regional initiatives be supported to reach their trade potential? Let me summarize our experience on this and then offer a couple of thoughts for the future. The problem is that LDC trade is not where it could be. From our experience in Africa, both in terms of intracontinental trade and exports to the rest of the world. We've talked about global trade policy, but this is also because of the high barriers to trade, specifically the time and cost of trading across borders, and companies' lack of capacity to overcome these hurdles. That is a large part in what makes LDC or exporters in LDCs less competitive with those of other countries. The good news is that these are eminently solvable problems, and that there are models that have been shown to work well in terms of regional integration. Trademark has been working on precisely this for over a decade, and as a result, we have seen serious progress. For example, in reducing the cost of transporting a container from Mombasa to Kampala by half to not much over $2 per kilometre now. The harder challenge is that it takes concerted, coordinated efforts over a period of time and a combination of visionary political commitment and strong technical support. There are no silver bullets, and funding on its own will not be sufficient. And as an aside, I fear that much that is badged as aid for trade does not necessarily go towards these effective integrated trade facilitation approaches. Because it is only a combination of factors that delivers results. Firstly, the development of trade policy that takes into account the needs of business. We've seen real progress made in the East African community over the last decade, from the single customs territory to the common external tariff. And the African Continental Free Trade Area now provides not only a major technical opportunity, but also the political momentum essential to progress. And this matters because many of the trade barriers we see in Africa are not necessarily policy-driven. They are due to the irregular or non-implementation of often very good instruments. As Trademark, we believe it is important not just to help develop good trade policy, but also to help governments implement it effectively. The other basket of challenges relates to hard and soft trade facilitation processes. Sorry, lost my place there. Firstly, putting in place the hard infrastructure, especially at transport nodes, so the first and last mile. Trademark has invested almost $200 million in Mombasa Port, for example, much of it to remove the major bottlenecks and therefore delays and excess costs. This has helped reduce dwell times from 11 days to 3.5 in just over a decade. These margins matter because these are the costs that will make exporters uncompetitive. Secondly, we've heard a lot, and I think very rightfully today, about digital infrastructure and the importance of e-commerce. We are seeing also huge gains from automating systems, especially customs management and electronic single windows. The times taken to receive certification and trade documents have now been slashed from days to hours. And the final ingredient is cooperation. This may sound obvious, but it is only through dedicated mechanisms that bring the public and private sectors together, fed by high-quality evidence and data, that you can tackle stubborn non-tariff barriers and therefore drive progress. If I may finish by giving you 3 challenges and opportunities for LDC trade for the future. Firstly, the future is green. I don't just say this because it matters for the planet. It is also an economic imperative for LDCs. We are now increasingly seeing global off-takers requiring low-carbon production and transportation. The technology is now there to be able to make the modal switches and for LDCs to be pioneers in green trade, but only if development partners and governments intentionally invest in making this happen. Secondly, trade facilitation solves more problems than just trade. The East African drought has become a multi-year challenge, and climate change will only make extreme weather events worse. Yet the region is also self-sufficient in food production, ensuring food commodities can pass across borders more easily, resolving non-tariff barriers related to standards testing, for example, and developing green channels for humanitarian commodities. All of these increase the quality and quantity of food aid and reduce the prices, which means that development partners and governments can reduce the scale of the problem and have a greater impact in tackling it. And lastly, if we are to have an impact on poverty, we must make trade systems work for vulnerable groups. I could not agree with you more, Vice Minister, that when you said that there is also a very strong business case for doing this. We saw when COVID hit, it was the informal cross-border traders who suddenly lost their livelihoods as foot traffic at borders was stopped almost overnight, and 70% of these traders were women. They don't have the coping mechanisms that large companies do. We're glad to see that organizations like AFCFTA are leading the way with the Women and Youth Protocol already agreed as a priority. And Trademark has supported over 100,000 women in Africa to access better market information and critically to formalize, which not only increases earning potential, but also increases safety in cross-border trade. So if I may finish by saying, we can effect systemic changes in these and other important areas most impactfully through taking a corridor cross-border approach, working both nationally and through supranational organizations. That is the way that we will enable people to pull themselves out of poverty, countries to become self-financing, and to float all boats higher. Thank you.
Urakoze cyane, thank you very much. À présent, nous voudrions inviter Madame Jeanne Selwangi Nalunga, Directrice Executive de Strengthening Africa in World Trade. Welcome, Madame.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I'm honored to be here to share my views on how to enhance the participation of LDCs in international trade and regional integration. Your Excellencies, in order to enhance the participation of LDCs in international trade and regional integration, in order to realize the Doha Program of Action, and in order to realize the target of doubling LDC's share of global export by 2031, action must be taken at all levels, at national level, regional level, multilateral level, and by all relevant institutions. In addition to aid for trade, there is need to overhaul the trade and financial system to make them more supportive of LDC's efforts towards structural transformation. Doubling LDC's share of global export by 2031, as stated in the Doha Program of Action, means that LDCs will continue exporting more raw materials at the expense of the raw women who produce these commodities. Gainful and meaningful participation in trade for LDCs will necessitate increased production and productivity, value addition, and trade in the value-added products. And this will also require supporting backward and forward linkages in the economy. This will further require supportive and complementary trade-related policies at all levels, a mindset change to design these policies, and policy space to implement them. Policy and policy frameworks are important as they facilitate coherence among individual policies. Policy space is also important to facilitate learning from what we are doing, changing what doesn't work, and upscaling what's working. Unfortunately, the policy space in LDC is highly constrained by international trade and financial regimes. At respective national levels, most often, trade-related policies and treaties and agreements negotiated and signed contradict each other. For example, they provide for very extensive liberalization at the expense of industrialization. There is also limited budget outlay to critical sectors like agriculture. In Africa, African leaders met at the Malabo and came up with a Maputo Declaration to ensure that 10% of their total budget is provided to agriculture. But today, only 13 African countries provide the 10% target. Most countries, their agriculture budget is less than 4%. Therefore, all economic policies, trade, investment, agriculture, fiscal, industrial, technology, education must pull in the same direction of structural transformation and must complement each other. At local level, small-scale producers should be assisted to produce for the market in terms of quality, quantity, and must be provided a fair price. This will ensure inclusive and beneficial trade. In Uganda, we have been working with Trademark Africa to ensure that maize producers produce according to the standard, and we have worked with Trademark to put in place the sesame standard. And this means that there is inclusive, really, and beneficial trade. Regarding the Continental Free Trade Area, beyond addressing tariff liberalization, it is important that the CFTA also addresses issues of capacity, productive capacities, and industrialization. And the African Union must be supported to do this. Regional integration is important in promoting LDCs' participation in international trade. However, in most regional economic groupings, there is more competition than cooperation. Hence, the challenges of non-tariff barriers, border closures, and negotiations of free trade agreements by individual countries in the regional economic groupings with third parties. I want to give an example in my region of East Africa. Kenya is negotiating with the US and the UK individually, yet the region has a common external tariff. It is important, therefore, that Africa strengthens its regional integration processes and also promotes regional value chains. At the multilateral and bilateral levels, the policies are also not very supportive. Some developed countries are still looking at LDCs and at Africa as a continuing source of raw materials. The European Union is negotiating and signing economic partnership agreements with individual countries in Africa, which has negative implication on regional integration process and the successful implementation of the Continental Free Trade Area. The economic partnership agreements also have provisions that are detrimental to Africa's industrialization. For example, the economic partnership agreements prohibit the use of export taxes, which is a critical tool for industrialization. The Doha Development Agenda was agreed here almost 20 years ago. I was here also. After protracted negotiations, despite the commitments in the various programs of action to implement the Doha Development Agenda, the Doha Development Agenda has not been implemented. The WTO has abandoned issues of concern to LDCs, for example, issues of subsidies, cotton issues, special safeguard mechanisms, issues of public stock holding for food security, even the issue of medicine, access to vaccines, is also still on the table. The success of the Doha Program of Action and the success of the SDGs and the success of the Doha Development Agenda are intrinsically related. And the implementation of the Doha Development Agenda will facilitate the successful implementation of the SDGs. Therefore, to end here, global economic policies must be reformed to address the challenges facing the LDCs, but action must also be taken at national and regional levels. I thank you.
Thank you, Madame Chan. Nous venons d'entendre la dernière déclaration de nos invités et de nos intervenantes et intervenants principaux. I now hand over to my fellow co-chair to continue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, co-chair, for your participation. And I also thanks the panelists for their valuable remarks, and you made many valuable points, like which should be our problem or the solution or in the future working plans. So I thank you very much for that. And Excellencies, distinguished delegates, we will now listen to intervention from the participant in the roundtable. All participants are invited to speak from their seats, but I will request all of you to maintain the time. The 3 minutes is allocated, but we want to listen more and more so that we can get valuable information and also future plan. So I want to mention, first of all, I would like to call upon His Excellency Huzamad Gulda Mayarat, Deputy Chairman of the Cabinet of Minister, Turkmenistan. So floor is yours. Is he here?
Уважаемая госпожа председатель, уважаемые дамы и господа, прежде всего хотел бы передать слово приветствия, пожелания успешной работы всем участникам конференции, а также поблагодарить руководство государства Катар и Организацию Объединенных Наций за теплый прием и высокий уровень организации данного мероприятия. Уважаемые участники, пандемия коронавируса, последние геополитические и геоэкономические события затронули практически все государства, негативно отразившись на развитии мирохозяйственных связей. По данным Всемирной торговой организации, мировая торговля в 2022 году продемонстрировала устойчивость, ее рост составил выше 3%. Расширил участие наименее развитых стран в международной торговле и региональной интеграции. Отмечено, что укрепление многосторонней торговой системы имеет важное значение для поддержания экономического развития государств. Туркменистан, как одно из многих развивающихся государств Центральной Азии, с каждым годом укрепляет свои торговые позиции на внешних рынках. Сотрудничество в сфере торговли расширяется за счет увеличения экспорта, импортных операций и торговых партнеров. В 2022 году по сравнению с 2021 годом рост внешней торговли Туркменистана составит почти 33%. В том числе экспорт увеличился 1,4%, импорт 1,2%. Туркменистан осуществляет связи с более 75 государствами мира. Активно ведется работа по освоению новых рынков сбыта, в том числе за счет наращивания газотранспортного потенциала страны, электронной коммерции, реализации широкомасштабных инфраструктурных проектов, развития транспортных коридоров и транспортно-коммуникационной сферы. Уважаемые участники, на наш взгляд, транспортная проблематика должна занять свое постоянное и прочное место в повестке Организации Объединенных Наций. В качестве отдельного направления деятельности Всемирной организации с точки зрения транспортной составляющей наиболее уязвимыми оказались именно развивающиеся страны, не имеющие выхода к морю. Как известно, наша страна выступила инициатором первой глобальной конференции по устойчивому транспорту, состоявшейся в Ашхабаде в ноябре 2016 года. На конференции министров транспорта развивающихся стран, не имеющих выхода к морю, прошедшем 15-16 августа 2022 года в Туркменистане, нам было предложено рассмотреть вопрос о создании специальной рабочей группы в ООН, которая бы целенаправленно отстаивала интересы стран, не имеющих выхода к морю в транспортной сфере и вела с этой целью системную работу с соответствующими структурами ООН. Также было предложено приступить к выработке реализации Генеральной Ассамблеи о повышении роли развивающихся стран, не имеющих выхода к морю, в развитии и укреплении глобального транспортного сотрудничества. Уважаемые участники, важное место в экономической политике Туркменистана занимает региональная интеграция. Одним из перспективных направлений диверсификации поставок энергоресурсов является строительство транснационального газопровода Туркменистан, Афганистан, Пакистан, Индия, программа ТАПИ, а также энергетической линии Туркменистан, Афганистан, Пакистан, это ТАП программа, который создает возможность для определенных и других стран региона для доступа к надежным, устойчивым и современным источникам энергии и удовлетворения их потребностей. Доступ населения вышеназванных стран к недорогим и надежным источникам энергии является масштабным социально значимым проектом, направленным на качественное повышение уровня жизни населения. Важным направлением региональной интеграции Туркменистана является также оказание технической помощи, содействие менее развитым странам и строительство социальных объектов, включая школы, детские сады и медицинские учреждения в регионе. Уважаемые участники, в завершении выступления хотел бы выразить уверенность, что итог конференции будет иметь ключевые значения для выработки решений и совместных действий, нацеленных на развитие и улучшение благосостояния наименее развитых стран. Желаю всем участникам плодотворной работы. Спасибо за слушание.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for your valuable points, especially transportation and energy and medicine. Those are really very, very important nowadays, especially during this pandemic and also at present this Ukraine-Russia war. So every country is suffering. So I thank you very much for your valuable remarks. And now I invite His Excellency Mr. Legione Mopotzoana, Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Relations, Lesotho. Lesotho, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, co-chairs, the President of Burundi, the President of Bangladesh, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great honor and privilege to take the floor at this high-level thematic roundtable on enhancing participation of the least developed countries in the international trade and regional integration. I would like to thank the State of Qatar to organize this important event. At the outset, co-chairs, allow me to table the status of my country, Lesotho. Lesotho is not only a least developed, but a single country landlocked small state, making it not just vulnerable and challenging, but also leave an unfortunate possibility not to access any international markets should relations between Lesotho and its neighbor go sour. Lesotho's situation is unique, and Lesotho needs urgent assistance. While Lesotho's situation is challenging, Lesotho also has a huge potential to explore its natural endowments, which is water, diamonds, arable land, and youthful human capital, to play a major part in the water and renewable energy sectors. Based on the water, wind, and solar resources, Lesotho has a huge potential to be a net exporter of green energy and clean water for the SADC region. We all agree that exports are an important engine for growth for our economies. They contribute significantly to employment and create new economic opportunities. we embrace the commitments in the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development that sets a target for doubling the share of LDCs in global exports, most of which part of the Doha Program of Action. LDCs have made some positive strides in facilitating and enabling environment for export promotion through development of legal frameworks and requisite policies and strategies. The government of Lesotho developed the National Export Strategy. However, there has not been significant progress in the implementation of strategies due to the financial constraints. Prioritizing trade through adequate budget allocation accompanied by increase in ODA are integral instruments for LDCs to maximize benefits of open trade. Today, the global value chains connect economies more strongly than ever and provides ample market access. However, LDCs tend to operate at the lowest rank of the ladder as they mainly supply raw materials and other low-value manufactured products due to imposition of tariff and non-tariff barriers. This for Lesotho relates to mainly textile and apparel, as well as diamond industries, representing the main economic sectors. As such, as there is abundant market access offered to LDCs, eliminating non-tariff barriers remains a vital tool to sustain their competitiveness and foster industrialization. Standards are also critical for optimum utilization of available market access. Hence, the government of Lesotho has established the Lesotho Standards Institute for Conformity Assessment. As a result, extensive focus should be directed to building capacity of LDCs to trade. More importantly, their productive capacity, which will increase opportunities in meeting the market standards and enhance competitiveness even without preferential treatments. It is the commitment of the government of Lesotho to rigorously build Lesotho's productive capacity, and I invite the international community to join my government in this endeavor. The importance of continued support for LDCs through extension, provision, and improvement of market access preferences cannot be overemphasized. This will enable LDCs to benefit from trade preferences while gradually pursuing their industrialization aspirations. Co-chairs, the transformative potential benefits of regional integration for LDCs relate to increased inter-regional markets, integration that offers extended market access opportunities, trade creation, structural transformation, productive employment leading to poverty reduction. Graduation of LDCs is expected to be a reflection of positive economic development. However, the singular assessment of progress in doubling the per capita GDP without consideration of other capital factors for structural development intensifies the challenge of non-sustainability of graduation. In this regard, we applaud the work of the Committee on Development Policy in advancing in terms of possible review of graduation criteria. In this regard, we reiterate our call to double aid for trade to support LDCs in the process of graduation. In conclusion, co-chairs, the increase in exports from LDCs to the world is noteworthy. Nonetheless, these exports still account for less than 1% of the global trade. The Doha conference therefore presents a unique moment for the LDC states to establish their place in the global economy by demonstrating strong political commitment and solidarity to advance the work of the Doha Program of Action in order to build necessary resilience to shocks for LDCs. While it is a fundamental responsibility for the LDCs to prioritize and contribute towards their own development, equally, the primary responsibility lies with the advanced economies to put in place comprehensive policy reforms that will facilitate trade for LDCs. Without such reforms, I am concerned the achievement, that achieving the sustainable development goals will remain an illusion. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for your valuable statement. Now I am inviting Hungary His Excellency Mr. Peter Sizerto, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Trade. Floor is yours.
Madam Co-Chair, I really do appreciate the invitation and the efforts you have put into organizing this conference in order to help the least developed countries. And we also appreciate the hospitality of Qatar here in Doha. I am representing Hungary, a country of which is a neighbor of Ukraine. So we are living in the neighborhood of the war. That's why the impacts of this war are immediate and severe on us. But we are also aware, Madam Co-Chair, that although this is a regional war in Europe, it has very serious global impacts. And we are also aware that the impacts of this war are absolutely tangible, even thousands of kilometers away. We are aware of the serious challenges regarding the energy supply globally. It is obvious that this war made it very clear how fragile the global system of energy supply is. And this war and the impacts of that made it very clear what kind of skyrocketing inflation the increase of the energy prices can cause. And we are also aware of the serious challenges regarding the safe supply of food, given the fact that both the Russian Federation and Ukraine have been playing an extremely important role when it comes to the safe and secure and reliable supply of the world when it comes to food. And we are also aware that such kind of challenges do have very serious security implications. We know that in countries which have a originally lower level of development, in countries where the stability is not that very solidly based, the shortage of food and the skyrocketing prices of commodities, of energy and all other items bring very serious security risks. We all know that these factors can lead to extremist ideologies to be spread. We all know that such kind of security-related challenges can lead to an increased threat of terror. And when we speak about extremist ideologies and threat of terror, these are among the most significant root causes of massive flows of illegal migration. And here I would like to tell you that Europe has now been faced with a tremendous security challenge posed by the war from the geographic direction of the east. And under such circumstances, it would not be, or it would be hardly, let's put it this way, possible to manage an additional such kind of a security challenge from the south in the form of further increased flows of migration. So therefore, I can tell you, Madam Co-President and dear colleagues, that in light of the war going on in Ukraine, it is more important than ever to ensure a substantial assistance to the least developed countries in order to avoid further massive migratory waves to break out. And in this regard, I can tell you, Madam Co-Chair, Excellencies and dear colleagues, that Hungary is ready and has already been taking its share when it comes to the support of those countries which can be massive sources of migration. Because we do believe that the best way to tackle the challenges posed by migration is to tackle the root causes and to avoid the outbreak of further migratory crisis. Let me inform you about the 5 major measures we have made in order to help countries in need and in order to help the least developed countries. First, we have opened a credit line at the Hungarian Exim Bank to an extent of $760 million, which credit line is there to financially assist the business-to-business cooperation between Hungary and the least developed countries. Second, we have already launched tied aid credit programs to an extent of $250 million in order to improve the situation regarding water management, food security, and healthcare in the least developed countries. Third, we understood that COVID put a serious challenge on the entire world. No one was an exception. But especially it put a challenge on those countries which had less access or slower access to vaccines. Therefore, we have donated 1.7 million COVID vaccines to least developed countries, and given the fact that we have stocks back at home because of a rational and responsible way of dealing with COVID crisis, not allowing healthcare-related issues to be over-politicized. Therefore, we were buying vaccines both from East and from West. So we are ready to help more. So in case there are countries among the least developed ones who still need COVID vaccines in order to tackle this challenge, we are ready to help. Number 4, there are 715 fully state-financed scholarships we provide to students coming from the least developed countries to Hungary. 715 annual scholarships fully financed by the state to the least developed countries for the students to come to study on Hungarian universities. And the demand and the popularity of this program is shown by the fact that this year there were 9,991 applications submitted. If it remains so, we are ready to increase the number of scholarships, obviously. And fifth, we have already spent $8 million on 65 projects in the least developed countries to support the Christian communities. I'm proudly representing a country with a 1,000-year-long Christian statehood. So we do feel the responsibility to support the Christian communities in need all around the world. Therefore, we have ran 65 projects in the least developed countries to an extent of $8 million to help the Christian communities there. And through the Hungary Helps program, we are ready to do more, definitely. So, Madam Co-Chair, in conclusion, I would like to let you know that, ensure you that Hungary is ready to support both in the United Nations and in the framework of the European Union all kinds of initiatives which increase the support to the least developed countries in order to ensure stability, in order to avoid a further migratory crisis to break out. We know it very well in Hungary, how it feels. Given the fact of geography, we are already under double pressure since we have received 1.1 million refugees from Ukraine, but we did have to stop 265,000 illegal migrants only last year at our southern border in order to protect the security of our country. So we are ready to continue to lend our assistance, our help to the least developed countries. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Excellency, for your comments. And it's really great that you are committed to support the, people, especially refugees. But perhaps, in Bangladesh, now we have 1.1 million Rohingya people are there. You extended your hand to only for Christian, but what about us, the Muslim or other religion? I believe that you will support all of them, those who are in refugee, and member of least development. All the least development people, countries need your assistance. Thank you very much for your comment. Thank you. Now I am calling upon Solomon Islands. His Excellency, Mr. Jeremiah Manali, Minister for Foreign Affairs and External Trade.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to make this brief intervention. Let me first of all thank all our panelists and other speakers for their important presentations. Co-chairs, I have a number of brief observations to make as far as Solomon Islands is concerned. First, is the key to unlocking trade potential in LDCs is infrastructure investments to connect producers to international consumers throughout the domestic and global value chains. And this has to be complemented by transferring growth technology to equip our youths to realize their potential to prosper as we diversify and boost our economy and meaningfully integrate into the global economy. Secondly, I believe partnerships are needed to reduce the cost of doing business in LDCs by investing in low carbon economy, science, digital investment, and connectivity. All of these are key drivers to leapfrog development. Access to finance and support to build a knowledge-based society with an enhanced labor skill opens more opportunities for LDC economies. Thirdly, we need to have in place market access agreements and non-reciprocal trade agreements as called for by the Doha Program of Action. In this regard, Solomon Islands has trade agreements in the Pacific, sub-regionally with the Melanesian countries, the MS3 trade agreement. With the European Union, we have the EPA, and also a bilateral EPA with the United Kingdom, and a non-reciprocal trade agreement with China. Fourth, trade arrangements, I believe, should be accompanied by or with visa waiver agreements to further facilitate trade. Solomon Islands have visa waiver arrangements with a number of trading partners, and we are still working with our two immediate markets, Australia and New Zealand, as well in this regard. Fifth, I believe it is critical for partner donor countries to have faith in our national systems and frameworks and allow LDCs to own and drive external assistance received so as to guarantee the sustainability of the projects. Co-chairs, the World Trade Organization Enhanced Integrated Framework Mechanism for LDCs. It's a success story for Solomon Islands in building our supply-side capacity to trade. The EIF intervention is nationally driven with inbuilt flexibilities that takes into account the spatial situation and characteristics of our country. This 5th UN Conference for LDCs should support its continuity and enhancement. Finally, co-chairs, let me close by stating that Solomon Islands has a lot of unfinished trade business. We remain determined to graduate out of our LDC status, but we need more time to put in trade structures, including productive capacities and means, to ensure our graduation from the group is irreversible, resilient, and sustainable. And therefore, we are here at this conference also requesting for an additional 3 years to prepare for our graduation, that is deferring our graduation, as I've said yesterday, from 2024 to 2027. I thank you, co-chairs.
Thank you very much for your valuable comment. Now I'm inviting Kyrgyzstan, His Excellency Danila Amangalji, Minister of Economy and Commerce. Floor is yours.
Добрый день, уважаемая госпожа сопредседатель. Позвольте от имени Кыргызской Республики и себя лично поприветствовать всех участников сегодняшнего круглого стола и высказать особую благодарность эмиру государства Катар, его высочеству шейху Тамим бин Хамад Аль-Тани и Организации Объединенных Наций за любезное приглашение и теплое гостеприимство. Кыргызская Республика убеждена, что интеграция в мировую торговлю имеет решающее значение для экономик развивающихся стран. За период членства в ВТО произошли кардинальные изменения как в географическом распределении и в структуре торговли, так и в целом внешнеторговом режиме. Проведение соответствующей либеральной торговой политики способствовало развитию различных секторов экономики, а также открытость рынка и либеральный законодательный режим страны обусловили развитие внешней торговли. За 25 лет членства в ВТО товарооборот Кыргызской Республики вырос больше, чем в 10 раз. На сегодняшний день Кыргызская Республика поддерживает торговые отношения более чем со 130 странами мира. Участвуя в региональных интеграционных процессах, Кыргызская Республика демонстрирует свою приверженность сохранению и укреплению незаменимой роли ВТО в качестве основной площадки для переговоров, многосторонней либерализации торговли, а также разработки и обеспечения соблюдения правил многосторонней торговой системы. Кыргызская Республика является страной с относительно небольшой экономикой, которая не имеет выхода к морю, что обуславливает высокий приоритет для страны в полном использовании наших прав членства Кыргызской Республики в ВТО. Все мы хорошо осведомлены о географических неудобствах, с которыми сталкиваются 32 страны, не имеющие выхода к морю, и мы неоднократно обсуждали эти ограничения и проблемы, особенно с точки зрения получения выгод от глобальной торговой системы. Как правило, страны, не имеющие выхода к морю, как Кыргызская Республика, сильно зависят от очень ограниченного набора источников экспортной выручки. Мы поддерживаем призывы стран региона разработать более совершенный набор торговых правил, которые позволят удержать экспорт и импорт на плаву во время кризиса и будут стимулировать устойчивое экономическое восстановление наряду с наименее развитыми странами, развивающихся стран, не имеющих выхода к морю. Хотел бы отметить, что самым большим препятствием на нашем пути к международному рынку остается высокая стоимость перевозки. Согласно анализу некоторых международных организаций, транзитные расходы стран, далеких от морских портов, составляют порядка 70% от экспортной выручки. Продукция из далеких от моря стран практически не представлена на международных торговых рынках. На такие страны приходится менее 1% мирового экспорта. Более 80% экспорта стран, не имеющих выхода к морю, составляют потребительские товары и природные ресурсы. Тем самым мы разделяем мнение о том, что отсутствие выхода к морю является одной из основных причин, по которым половина из 32 стран, окруженных сушей со всех сторон, входят в число беднейших стран мира. Из-за своей удаленности от морского порта Кыргызстан сильно зависит от соседних транзитных стран в своей внешней торговле и несет убытки от высоких торговых транзитных издержек. Огромные транспортные расходы, слабая инфраструктура и узкие места для перевозок, которые сопровождаются с требованиями в импорте и экспорте, служат серьезным препятствием для интеграции Кыргызстана в мировую экономику, снижая конкурентоспособность экспорта или приток иностранных инвестиций. Вопросы региональной интеграции очень важны для продвижения торговли. Мы убеждены, что эти процессы ведут к миру и стабильности между странами-членами. В этой связи мы всячески поддерживаем процессы по вступлению стран нашего региона во Всемирную торговую организацию. Уверены, гармонизация торговых режимов в рамках многосторонней системы позволит ускорить процесс региональной интеграции и взаимосвязанности. Кыргызстан готов сплотиться вместе с другими странами, чтобы продвигать на платформе ВТО вопросы преодоления разрыва между странами, не имеющими выхода к морю, и другими государствами-членами ВТО, имеющими выход к морю в области особого и диверсифицированного режима, расширенного доступа к рынкам для товаров и услуг, содействию устойчивой торговли, программы по наращиванию потенциала и другие вопросы, нерешенные указанных проблем, что поможет реализовать особые потребности и задачи в области развития в соответствии с 6 приоритетными областями, определенными Венской программой действий. Спасибо, благодарю за внимание.
Thank you very much for your remarks, and I know this landlocked country has tremendous difficulties, but I hope that all problem will be solved. Now, I invite Mozambique, His Excellency Silvino Moreno, Minister of Industry and Trade, Mozambique.
Thank you very much for the floor. Your Excellencies, co-chairs of these roundtables, Excellencies, I would like to start by congratulating you, co-chairs, and members of this panel for sharing your experiences, best practices, and views on how future economic cooperation and international trade should be done to continue benefiting and empowering the LDCs. The situation imposed by the COVID-19 pandemic and economic recession highlights the fact of how the global economy is based on interdependence, fair approach, and how the economic partnership between states and regions should be a priority. New forms of leadership and management are required by all of us, including the private sector, civil society, and other actors in this process. We need to think creatively by encouraging innovative approaches and redefine how to deal with current challenges related to development, build and promote resilience to our economies. Trade is key and robust area of sustainability, has an inclusive impact on development and growth and for developing countries, especially least developed countries. Mozambique, under the National Development Strategy, is committed to further strengthening the creation of a favorable business environment for achieving sustainable development, increasing productive capacities, diversifying economies and base of exports, and build the necessary infrastructure, and a regular public dialogue with the private sector to engender the economic growth and prosperity should continue to be one of our priorities. Trade based on advantages of the multilateral trading system will remain a strategic driver for economic growth for LDCs countries. LDC governments must also establish partnership agreements with the private sector looking at priority areas of our development programs. Co-chairs, Mozambique recently approved the national program to industrialize Mozambique with the objective to contribute for the increase of industrial production, investment in infrastructure, development of human resources based on the local transformation of raw material, inclusive and environmental sustainable within the scope of improving our trade balance. Integrated industrialization in all LDCs should be a priority in order to diversify their economies and further participate in international trade as a complement to their participation to regional trade and regional integration. Despite all our efforts, the role of the United Nations, in particular its agencies, are fundamental to continue to serve as a vehicle for fostering cooperation, industrial development, agriculture, and the sustainable transfer and acquisition of technologies. The enhancement integrated framework for trade-related technical assistance must continue to be an important instrument to mobilize resources required for ADCs to become more active players in the global trading system by reducing trade constraints on the supply side and trade costs with full involvement of micro, small, and medium enterprises for their competitiveness and internationalization. For LDCs, their participation in international trade and regional integration is very relevant because it can also change lives even for the small trade operators. To conclude, allow me to say that the effective, fair, concerted, and sustainable response is required to overcome structural challenges, achieve international development goals for competitive, resilient, global integrated, and an overriding factor for LDCs, rapid economic recovery, growth, and development. I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much for your remarks. Now I'm inviting the Third World Network. So first, shall I call the next name? The Vietnam, Her Excellency Ms. Lee Thi Thu Hang, Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs.
Madam Madam Co-Chair,
Network is here.
distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, allow me to express my deep appreciation to the State of Qatar for the warm hospitality and excellent organization of the conference. Looking back on the process of globalization, international trade has been the key driver for economic growth worldwide. Nowadays, international trade also plays a pivotal role in realizing the SDGs. However, the current global trade landscape is rapidly evolving with new dimensions such as protectionism, regionalism, e-commerce, green and sustainable trade. LDCs and vulnerable groups are those hardest hit by these emerging trends. Now more than ever, LDCs need to be equipped with new capacity to harness all the benefits of international trade. Excellencies, Vietnam has become one of the most open economies in the world with a trade to GDP ratio of over 200%. Based on this transformation, there are some key takeaways. First, regional integration is the cornerstone for the gradual and extensive integration into global trading system. Second, competitiveness and domestic resources play a decisive role in this transformation. Third, the people and businesses should be placed at the center, both as a goal and driver of inclusive trade. From our own experiences, I would like to propose 4 key points. First, we should continue to uphold the indispensable role of the rule-based, free, fair, transparent, and inclusive multilateral trading system. All relevant stakeholders, including LDCs, need to work hard to accelerate WTO reforms. Second, LDC should strive to build a comprehensive trade policy ecosystem in which green, digital, and inclusive commerce policies are mutually supported and connected. Third, LDCs need to intensify intra-regional trade and economic integration with neighboring countries, focus on improving the quality and diversity of their products and infrastructure. Last but not least, aid for trade is crucial for LDC to build their trade capacity. We call upon development partners, including those in the private sector, to fulfill their financial commitment and step up technology transfer and technical assistance to LDCs, particularly in green technology. Vietnam is eager to become a bridge connecting LDC and other members of FTA frameworks that it has participated in. Vietnam also attaches great importance to South-South and triangular cooperation. We will also be joining in the international community to work with NDC in accelerating their graduation process and supporting for NDC enhanced integration into global trade. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. South-South cooperation is really very, very important. Now, the Third World Network. Is there anybody to respond from Third World Network? Because I don't have any name. Please mention your name and then you can make your point.
Yes, my name is Meena Raman from the Third World Network, speaking on behalf of civil society. Your Excellency, members of the panel, thank you very much for allowing us to make this intervention. I think we need an honest and critical assessment as to how the existing trade regime, has it really benefited those who are particularly the most poorest in the world, and whose agenda has it been advancing? I'd like to particularly echo my sentiment with Jane Nalunga, who spoke earlier on the panel. And I think what is really critically clear is that the agenda in which we see the trade agreements currently which exist, either in the WTO or to the economic partnership agreements, or the agreements which are being now foisted, including the IPEF, which is being pushed by the United States. And if we really look at these agreements, I think the real question to ask is, whose agenda have they been pushing and who has benefited? Now, for one person who has been following the WTO talks for a long time, and in listening to the countries who have been cotton producers in the poor world, who have been calling for the longest time for the removal of cotton subsidies of the North and for agricultural liberalization of the North, what we have seen happening is the reverse, which is the agricultural liberalization of the South, the protection of the North, and it is really heart-wrenching to watch that these countries, until today in the LDCs, continuing to call for the removal of cotton subsidies of the North. And if you look at agricultural liberalization and the impacts for the developing world, particularly in LDCs, many countries who have been producers of food have had their food production displaced. And then if you look at what, as Jane Nalunga had said, if you look at the economic partnership agreement where export taxes are prohibited, now this is to keep the raw materials and the minerals of the South cheap for the North and the corporations of the North. So if this is what the trade agreements are about, we do need radical reform. Not the WTO reform which has been pushed at the moment, but reform of a kind which truly and will be beneficial to the developing world, particularly the LDCs, where flexibilities are, you don't have to negotiate flexibilities the way that they are being asked to negotiate, where we have to ensure that the subsidies are removed for the big agriculture producers of the North, where special and differential treatment is really entrenched, where public stockholding and producing of food is important, where there is access and the waiver of the TRIPS agreement for the COVID vaccines and the pandemics that will come. So I think we need an honest reassessment, and if these agreements are to benefit the LDCs, they have to be radically transformed in the interest of the people of the South, not the way they have been going. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I feel that for agriculture production, at this moment, at this present world order, the agriculture need all kind of supports. There should not be any food crisis. Every country should get a chance to produce their own food. Thank you very much. Is there anybody from Third World Network want to mention any comment? Please mention your good name and the organization. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Première ministre. Maintenant, nous voulons inviter Son Excellence.
Only one is pointing out. He wanted to speak.
Côte d'Ivoire.
Côte d'Ivoire, yeah.
Tu voulais intervenir aussi?
Yeah, please speak. Floor is yours, yeah.
Merci beaucoup.
Mali.
Je suis M. Issouf Traoré de la Côte d'Ivoire, représentant du Parlement ivoirien. Le commerce international joue un rôle essentiel dans l'accélération de la croissance économique et du développement durable. Malgré l'expansion massive du commerce et des investissements au cours des dernières décennies, les pays les moins avancés sont confrontés à des difficultés considérables pour s'intégrer efficacement dans les systèmes commerciaux mondiaux et pour tirer parti des possibilités offertes par le commerce international et les chaînes de valeur mondiales. Cela est principalement dû aux contraintes liées à l'offre et aux barrières tarifaires et non tarifaires. La pandémie a eu un impact négatif sur les flux commerciaux internationaux. Au plus fort de la pandémie en 2020, les exportations de marchandises des PMA ont chuté de 7,8%. Le protectionnisme, la numérisation rapide, le virage vers les accords commerciaux plurilatéraux et les régionalismes sont quelques-uns des nouveaux phénomènes auxquels les PMA doivent s'attaquer en priorité.
la promotion du commerce électronique, la diversification, la création de valeur ajoutée et une meilleure intégration dans les chaînes de valeur régionales et mondiales, notamment par le biais de l'aide au commerce, sont les besoins les plus urgents pour les PMA. Les cibles de l'objectif du développement durable consistant à doubler la part des PMA dans les exportations mondiales d'ici en 2020 par rapport à 2011, cible de 2%, n'a pas été atteinte. Les exportations des biens et services des PMA ont légèrement augmenté, passant de 2012,8 milliards de dollars US en 2011 à 235 000 milliards de dollars US en 2021. La même année, les exportations des biens et des services commerciaux des PMA sont réparties à la hausse. Toutefois, la part des PMA dans les exportations mondiales des biens et services est restée statique entre 2020 et 2021, s'établissant à 0,93%, soit un peu moins, plus qu'en 2017, à 0,92%. Il en va de même du côté des importations, avec une partie stable de 1,39 en 2021. Le déficit commercial mondial des PMA a atteint un nouveau record en 2021 avec 113 000 milliards de dollars. C'est ainsi le commerce électronique. On estime que la valeur mondiale du commerce électronique a atteint près de 26 000 milliards de dollars US en 2018, ce qui équivaut à environ 30% du produit brut mondial. Le commerce numérique s'offre d'importantes opportunités pour les PMA, notamment pour leurs petites et moyennes entreprises et leurs start-up, malgré d'énormes potentiels. Les PMA n'ont pas été en mesure de tirer parti des énormes possibilités offertes par le commerce électronique. Le développement et l'utilisation réussie du commerce électronique dans les PMA nécessite la mise en place d'une série de réformes fondamentales, telles que l'amélioration de l'infrastructure des services de technologie, de l'information et des communications, la mise en place des systèmes de paiement en ligne sécurisés, la promotion du développement des compétences et l'adoption d'un cadre réglementaire solide, l'intégration régionale. La coopération régionale, y compris l'intégration commerciale et la coopération en matière de transit, peut faciliter l'intégration des PMA dans le système commercial mondial, notamment en augmentant la taille des marchés, en améliorant leur compétitivité et en renforçant la connectivité régionale et le commerce intra-régional. Il est important de favoriser une intégration régionale et sous-régionale pour harmoniser plus harmonisée et plus efficace. Les PMA ont besoin d'un soutien plus harmonisé et plus efficace. Promouvoir la coopération sous-régionale et régionale, y compris la promotion des exportations et l'amélioration de la connectivité régionale par la mesure de la facilité du commerce. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much. Now, Cuba. Cuba, perhaps you want to talk? Yeah, please.
Muchas gracias, Presidenta, panelistas, excelencias. Gracias por sus importantes presentaciones hechas en la mañana de hoy. Nuestro mundo se enfrenta hoy a la persistencia de múltiples crisis que continúan amenazando los avances en materia de desarrollo y en específico a los países menos adelantados. Mientras muchos países en desarrollo siguen luchando por recuperarse económicamente y de los devastadores efectos de la pandemia COVID-19, en el caso de los PMA, sus esfuerzos se han visto perjudicados por las tensiones geopolíticas, el aumento de la presión sobre los alimentos, la crisis económica y financiera, la volatilidad de los mercados, la inflación, el endurecimiento monetario, la creciente crisis de endeudamiento, el desplazamiento de personas, las medidas coercitivas unilaterales y los continuos efectos adversos al cambio climático que socavan la capacidad para avanzar en el proceso de recuperación y superar todos los retos económicos y sociales actuales de los países menos adelantados. Si los últimos años han supuesto un retroceso en nuestro camino para cumplir los ODS, las perspectivas actuales realmente no son alentadoras. Se estima que el crecimiento del Producto Interno Bruto per cápita en los países en desarrollo y puntualmente en los PMA en los años 22 y 23 será inferior al crecimiento medio anterior a la pandemia. Se estima que cada aumento adicional del 1% en el alza de los precios de los alimentos y la energía podría llevar a 71 millones de personas más a las filas de los pobres. Si la tendencia actual continúa y el crecimiento del PIB per cápita se mantiene por debajo de las tasas anteriores a la pandemia, se estima que 574 millones de personas, casi el 7% de la población mundial, seguirán viviendo con menos de $2,15 al día en el año 2030. Por otra parte, se observa una reducción en la participación de los países menos adelantados en el comercio mundial, tema que estamos tratando en esta mesa hoy, como consecuencia e impactos ocasionados por la pandemia de la COVID-19. Basados en el informe sobre las tendencias recientes del comercio de mercancías y servicios para los PMA, se destaca que la COVID-19 ocasionó una reducción del 35% de sus exportaciones de servicios y un 12% del de mercancías en el año 20. Estas tendencias del comercio demuestran que el objetivo propuesto en el Programa de Acción de Estambul de duplicar la participación de los PMA en las exportaciones mundiales, adoptado en la Cuarta Conferencia de Naciones Unidas, no se ha cumplido y que la pandemia ha revertido los progresos económicos logrados durante los 10 años anteriores. Resulta imperativo que la comunidad internacional colabore con miras a fomentar oportunidades comerciales para estos países y realice alianzas globales con ese objetivo. En vísperas de la 12ª Conferencia Ministerial de la OMC de junio del año pasado en Ginebra, la directora general de la organización y el representante de la Oficina del Alto Representante de los PMA firmaron un acuerdo de asociación orientado a fortalecer la cooperación en función de impulsar la participación de los PMA en el sistema multilateral de comercio. Esa asociación entre la OMC y las Naciones Unidas marcó un hito importante, teniendo en cuenta que la comunidad internacional está unando esfuerzos para colaborar en el impulso de la participación de los PMA en el comercio mundial. Hasta hoy constituye un alto desafío para lograr un sistema de comercio universal equitativo, basado en reglas que sea justo, abierto y beneficie a todos, ayudar a los PMA para que aumenten sus exportaciones y así lograr su inserción en el comercio mundial. Se debe continuar exigiendo la consecución oportuna del acceso a los mercados, libre de derechos y de contingentes, de manera duradera para todos los PMA, de conformidad con las decisiones de la OMC, entre otras cosas, velando porque las normas de origen preferenciales aplicables a las importaciones de los PMA sean transparentes y sencillas y contribuyan a facilitar el acceso a los mercados. Cuba invita a la comunidad internacional a proponer y aprobar acciones necesarias para mejorar de manera efectiva la participación de los PMA en el comercio mundial, así como a fomentar políticas que permitan una mayor y mejor integración de estos países en la arena internacional. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much for your comment. Now I invite Sweden, Her Excellency Ms. Diana James, Vice Minister for International Development Cooperation, Sweden. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair, and Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. As we have heard here today, LDCs persistently account for a small share of global trade and remain highly dependent on commodity exports with limited value addition. Structural reforms are essential, not only to boost LDC export capacity, but also to move away from the commodity dependence trap. Such structural reforms can be underpinned by capacity building and trade-related assistance instruments such as Aid for Trade, for which Sweden is a major donor. We are eager to partner in this effort. Sweden's belief in trade and regional integration as a path towards economic freedom and growth is based on our own experience. In 1954, Norway, Denmark, Finland, Iceland, Sweden, the Faroe Islands and Greenland and the Åland Islands established a common Nordic labor market, and 3 years later the Nordic Passport Union. Post-Second World War, Nordic cooperation has been successful has been seen as successful in facilitating free movement in the region ever since. Intensifying intra-regional trade and cooperation can also enhance participation of LDCs in international trade. We firmly support and have high hopes for the new African Continental Free Trade Area. More cross-border trade and trade facilitation measures within the African continent will serve to strengthen Africa's position in the global economy. As a free trading nation, Sweden views the ACFTA project as a stepping stone towards unlocking opportunities for a more competitive, free and open African market based on interconnectivity and resilient, sustainable and inclusive economic growth. Indeed, we need only look to the European Union to see that regional economic integration can have valuable economic benefits. Sweden currently holds the EU Council presidency. In this role, we will continue our efforts to strengthen the participation of LDCs in global commerce, including by getting the new EU Generalized Scheme of Preferences in place to allow LDCs continued preferential access to EU market. We will do what we can in our end. Our hope that also others will do their part, because let us be clear, the roots of successful investments, manufacturing, exports and growth are in the country that we call home. Rule of law is established at home. Corruption is stamped out at home. Red tape is cut at home. Incentives for entrepreneurship are created at home. Only together we can make real change happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I call upon Morocco. His Excellency Mr. Omar Hilali, Permanent Representative of the United Nations. Floor is yours, sir.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente, Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs. Les pays les moins avancés continuent de faire face à des défis considérables pour s'intégrer dans les systèmes commerciaux mondiaux. En effet, si des progrès significatifs ont été réalisés au cours de la dernière décennie pour améliorer les possibilités d'accès au marché pour les PMA, des efforts supplémentaires seront encore nécessaires. Le programme d'action de Doha devrait ouvrir la voie pour permettre aux PMA de réaliser pleinement leur potentiel commercial. Aussi, il est de notre responsabilité collective de faire en sorte que ce programme puisse avoir des retombées durables pour les PMA. Tous les partenaires sont appelés à agir effectivement en vue de la réalisation des objectifs et engagements convenus, notamment en ce qui concerne l'octroi de l'accès libre aux exportations des PMA, l'augmentation de l'aide au commerce, la facilitation de l'accession des PMA à l'OMC, l'appui à la diversification économique, à la mise en œuvre des changements transformateurs et au renforcement des capacités de production et d'exportation et la promotion de la participation des PMA au commerce électronique et le renforcement de leurs infrastructures numériques et capacités humaines et institutionnelles. Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, la promotion de l'intégration régionale et des échanges commerciaux avec les PMA est au cœur de la politique de coopération du Royaume du Maroc. À ce titre, le Royaume figure parmi les premiers pays du Sud à accorder l'accès au marché en faveur des PMA. En effet, dans le cadre de ses efforts pour renforcer l'intégration régionale, le Maroc a pris l'initiative visant l'amélioration des conditions d'accès au marché marocain pour les exportations des PMA d'Afrique. Annoncé par Sa Majesté le Roi Mohamed VI en 2000, à l'occasion du sommet Afrique-Europe et appliquée depuis janvier 2001, cette initiative consiste en l'exonération totale des droits d'importation en faveur de certains produits des PMA d'Afrique. Grâce à cette initiative, les exportations des PMA d'Afrique vers le Maroc ont connu une évolution importante. En effet, le volume des échanges entre le Maroc et les pays bénéficiaires s'est élevé à 11 milliards de dollars en 2022 contre 12 milliards en 2012, 19 milliards contre 12 en 2012. Le Maroc est également engagé dans l'opérationnalisation de la zone de libre-échange continentale africaine, ZLECAF, et de la réalisation de ses objectifs, entre autres la consolidation du taux d'industrialisation du continent, la réduction de la dépendance en matières premières et l'accélération de l'intégration des économies africaines. À ce titre, le projet de gazoduc Nigeria-Maroc, qui couvrira 11 pays africains, est un exemple de projet structurant à promouvoir pour renforcer l'intégration régionale et sous-régionale, particulièrement en Afrique. Enfin, je voudrais réitérer l'engagement infaillible du Maroc, conformément aux orientations de Sa Majesté le Roi Mohammed VI, pour mettre à contribution son expérience et son savoir-faire à travers une coopération sud-sud solidaire et une coopération tripartite dynamique avec les PMA. Je vous remercie, Madame la Présidente.
Merci beaucoup. Avant de continuer, je voudrais vous informer que nous avons seulement 10 minutes pour le temps qui nous est imparti. Donc, je rappelle aux prochains orateurs de respecter le temps de 3 minutes. Maintenant, nous appelons His Excellency Miss Hongbo Wang, Minister, Permanent Mission to the United Nations pour la Chine.
尊敬的共同主席、诸位阁下、女士们、先生们，首先感谢卡塔尔为此次大会所做的精心安排，感谢秘书处精心筹备此次圆桌会议。当前，世界经济脆弱性突出，粮食和能源等多重危机叠加，发展中成员，特别是最不发达国家，面临更加严峻的挑战。最不发达国家是世界贸易体系中最脆弱、最迫切需要帮助的国家，因此，此次圆桌会以促进最不发达国家参与国际贸易和区域一体化为主题举办。这次讨论是具有重要意义的。借此机会，中方愿分享几点体会。第一，中方始终支持最不发达国家融入多边贸易体制。加入世贸组织20多年来，中国一直致力于在力所能及的范围内帮助最不发达国家融入多边贸易体制，发展生产能力，增强出口竞争力。12年前，中国与世贸组织秘书处合作设立中国项目，取得积极成效。我们迎来了6个最不发达国家成为世贸组织的新成员，他们从这一过程中获益匪浅，国家的贸易和经济取得了长足的发展。这一项目有效帮助了最不发达国家和发展中成员培养熟悉世贸组织规则体系的人才，更好地推动了贸易政策与整体发展战略之间的有效对接，切实增进了最不发达国家及发展中成员之间的贸易政策协调，取得了各方的积极评价。第二，中方始终坚持以自身发展惠及最不发达国家。中国坚持扩大开放，主动与世界共享发展机遇，成为世界经济增长的主要稳定器和动力源。中国以自身的开放和发展，为包括最不发达国家在内的世界各国提供了广泛的市场和发展机遇。目前，中国已对29个最不发达国家98%的税目产品实施零关税，吸收了最不发达国家25%的产品出口，已成为最不发达国家的最大出口市场。同时，中方还积极支持最不发达国家参加进博会等展会，通过这些平台开拓中国市场，开拓全球市场。第三，中国将在全球发展倡议框架下积极开展南南合作。2021年9月，习近平主席在联合国大会上提出全球发展倡议，旨在推动全球发展迈向平衡、协调、包容新阶段，对加快落实2030年可持续发展议程具有重要意义，得到100多个国家和国际组织的积极响应。中方愿同各方一道，支持发展中成员，特别是最不发达国家，增强经济韧性，促进经济复苏，用实际行动落实全球发展倡议，推动构建全球发展命运共同体。在此，中方呼吁各方深化合作，积极落实世贸组织第12届部长会议在最不发达国家加入和发展议题方面取得的共识，推动贸易和投资自由化、便利化，助力最不发达国家更好融入全球经济，共同培育全球发展新动能。最后，预祝本次圆桌会议取得圆满成功。谢谢主席。
Thank you. Now we invite Her Excellency Ms. Jutta Urpilainen, European Commissioner for International Partnership, Europe.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very glad to join you today to discuss such a crucial issue. Trade indeed is a key vehicle for development. Diversification and integration into the world economy is critical to foster economic growth, sustainable development, and achieve the twin green and digital transitions. The European Union is strongly committed to supporting least developed countries participate in regional and global value chains. Our generalized system of preferences facilitates access to the EU market for developing countries by removing import duties. It is widely recognized as the most progressive trade regime in the world in terms of coverage and benefits for the most vulnerable countries. Thanks to the Everything But Arms arrangement under the GSP, launched at the LDC 3 conference 20 years ago, the EU offers the most favorable trade provisions in the world for this group, resulting in export from LDCs and the EU of over 28 billion euros in 2021. But we know that removal of tariffs is not enough. The EU with its member states are also the world's largest provider of aid for trade, which supports least developed countries' trade capacity and infrastructure. We provide 3/4 of global aid for trade towards trade facilitation reform in developing countries, and this is all part of our ongoing commitment to support countries' path towards sustainable development. Another way to support the integration of most vulnerable countries into value chains is through regional trade integration. Here we are, and here we have a great example to draw: the African Continental Free Trade Area. It represents the biggest single market in the world and is a powerful vehicle to boost investments in Africa and favor sustainable economic growth. Having undergone the economic integration process ourselves, we are aware of the huge opportunities that this brings to enhance sustainable development. So the EU has shown its support not just in words, but in commitments. We provided technical assistance and used our development cooperation tools and trade policy to help achieve the objective of the African Continental Free Trade Area. In recent years, the EU has committed 74 million euros to support its negotiations and implementation. Together with the EU member states working on our Team Europe initiatives, the EU remains committed to continuing and stepping up our support to the African partners. And under Global Gateway, our investment strategy, the European Commission has allocated 630 million euros to boost regional and continental infra-African trade and economic integration. So, Your Excellencies, I really look forward to hearing the outcomes of this debate. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup. Maintenant, c'est le tour de Monsieur Dejene Tezera, Director, Division of Agribusiness and Infrastructure Development, UNIDO.
Thank you, Co-Chair, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. We are today less than 7 years away from 2030 Sustainable Development Goals finish line. Regional, political, and economic integration has advanced in the past years, and many LDCs have made commendable progress. Nevertheless, regional, intercontinental, and international trade within many LDCs is still behind the magnitudes of outward business and trade relations with major global players. Besides the negative effects of COVID-19, the main economic challenges in LDCs include limited competitiveness of enterprises and sustainable structural transformation. While digitalization and its increased impact on skills development, technology adoption, innovation, and development, partners are therefore required to integrate LDCs into rapidly changing reality of the international trade systems. Therefore, strong international partnership and governance structures are needed to enable countries and regions to fully benefit from trade opportunities by being able to conform with standards and technical regulations and to maximize SMEs' export potential and support them to enter new markets. In light of the need for quality standards, UNIDO's interventions through major technical cooperation programs, such as the European Union-funded West Africa Competitiveness Program, WACOMP, or the SCP Business-Friendly Program, is systematically supporting the overall business environment in these countries and regions through improved quality infrastructure with a particular focus on selected priority value chains. Most LDCs being in Africa, there is a particular and strong need to foster Pan-African trade competitiveness and market access in framework of African Continental Free Trade Area, which aims to give decisive boost to continental integration. UNIDO is very pleased that African Continental Free Trade Area and the strengthening of intra-African trade has found strong support from development partners such as the European Union, African Development Bank, and others. Such continental integration will strongly rely on experiences gained at the level of regional economic communities like the Economic Communities for West African States, ECOWAS, and the already well-established regional economic partnership. In order to enhance intra-African and international trade, UNIDO will remain in the forefront to expand our technical cooperation and technical assistance programs and complement the others' expertise to maximize our support to our LDCs in Africa and beyond. I thank you.
Merci. Thank you very much. Now we call upon Mr. Richard Adeniyi Adebayo, Minister, Federal Minister in Industry, Trade and Investment in Nigeria.
Thank you, Co-Chair. I'm very pleased to participate in this high-level roundtable. From the outset, let me underscore the very obvious fact that all developing countries and LDCs aspire to improve the material well-being of their people, especially with respect to the provision of better living conditions with respect to health, education, housing, nutrition, and job opportunities. In fact, despite the various daunting challenges that developing countries and LDCs continue to face, the eradication of extreme poverty as enshrined in the Sustainable Development Goals remains a topmost priority. While the quality of human and natural resources, as well as physical capital and technology available to a country remain very critical to economic growth and development, there is strong empirical evidence to show that international trade is also very important to development. Indeed, trade has contributed to the growth and development of both small and large economies. Under the Millennium Development Goals, trade contributed to reducing by half the proportion of people suffering from hunger and those living on less than $1 a day. It is also important to stress that the benefits from trade are not automatic. A wide range of complementary policies are required to ensure that the benefits from trade accrue to the poor. These measures include macroeconomic stability, access to trade finance, transportation and connectivity, as well as effective regulatory and institutional frameworks. In order to enhance competitiveness and create a sustainable trade-enabling environment, policy coordination across all these areas is also very important. To that end, I'm happy to note that many LDCs over the years have conducted diagnostic trade integration studies aimed at facilitating the development of roadmaps or guidelines that would underpin how they participate and benefit from the international trading system. As a practical tool, a diagnostic trade integration study can assist a country to analyze its overall economic situation, especially with respect to the evolution of key economic sectors, and propose the necessary trade and investment-related reforms required to move forward, including how to leverage resources to address trade facilitation and export diversification issues. Another important outcome of the study is the preparation of national trade integration strategies, which can further help a country to mainstream trade into its development plans. In terms of lessons learned, we have seen that successful economic integration leads to a reduction in trade costs, improved availability of goods and services, wider choice for consumers, and efficiency gains that lead to greater purchasing power. In addition, regional integration helps countries to overcome those constraints that impede the flow of goods, services, capital, people, and ideas. In Africa, intensified efforts at regional integration and cooperation have led to the establishment of the African Continental Free Trade Area, covering 55 countries and aimed at, inter alia, creating a single market for the continent, promoting the free flow of goods and services, and boosting intra-African trade and the trading position of Africa in the global market. With the large majority of the world's LDCs on the African continent, I call on those LDCs that have successfully integrated into the global trading system to share their experience, particularly with private sector and public sector officials in Africa, so that we can replicate the success stories and further pull millions of our people out of poverty. I'm convinced that experience sharing can help LDCs to pragmatically respond to the usual political economy challenges associated with trade reforms while promoting wider stakeholder participation and ownership by all segments of society. I thank you all for your kind attention. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I call upon His Excellency Mr. Madhu Kumar Marasini, Secretary, Minister of Industry, Commerce and Supply, Nepal.
Honorable co-chairs, Excellencies, distinguished guests, delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, co-chairs, for the floor. I would also like to thank all the panelists and my fellow speakers for their thoughtful and very informative presentation. The discussion on international trade and regional integration couldn't be more important at a time when many of the LDCs, including my own country, Nepal, are posing for a smooth and irreversible LDC graduation. LDC's export is limited due to weak productive capacity, narrow export base, and limited market destinations, and susceptibility to price volatility for primary commodities. Stringent rules of origin and non-tariff barriers have further restricted LDCs from integrating into the regional and global value chains. I hope these facts will be taken into considerations while providing market access to LDCs. Honorable co-chairs, the IPOA goal of doubling the share of LDCs in global exports by 2020 was not met. Instead, the share of LDCs in global exports declined from 0.9% to 0.91% in the period from 2011 to 2020. The challenges that we faced several decades ago are still the same, and let me re-emphasize here that we cannot afford a similar fate for DPOA, which envisions doubling the share by 2031. In view of this persistent marginalization, international efforts to support LDCs to increase their participation in global trade and achieve sustainable development are needed more than ever. In this context, let me highlight the following few points. First, we should continue to promote a universal, rule-based, open, non-discriminatory, and equitable multilateral trading system. Effective implementation of the Trade Facilitation Agreement as well as the special and differential treatment must be maintained. Continuation of the duty-free, quota-free market access as well as other specific trade benefits for LDCs are equally important. Simple and transparent preferential rules of origin are key to promoting LDCs export. Protectionist tendencies and trade distortions measures, including in agriculture, must be prevented. Second, our development partners should provide incentives-based international support, particularly for the graduating LDCs for making their graduation sustainable and irreversible. Third, there is the need to encourage substantial investments in enhancing the productive capacity and trade diversification of LDCs. For this, foreign direct investment, technology transfer, ODA, aid for trade, including through the Enhanced Integrated Framework EIF, as well as other technical and financial assistance are important. Fourth, we should also focus on e-commerce by strengthening ICT infrastructure and building capacities to keep abreast LDCs in the evolving global digital trading landscape. If timely supports were not provided in digital trading front, then this is going to be yet another missed opportunity for the LDCs. I would like to draw international community's attention in this respect. Without adequate international support with preferential treatment, LDCs will not be able to get their fair share in global trading system. Without securing fair share in global trade, LDCs cannot achieve economic advancement. Regional integration is important, but the more important is to enhance productive capacity of LDCs so that they can reap the benefit from regional integration and international trade, which will enable them meet their long overdue aspirations of economic growth and prosperity. I wish for a productive outcome of this roundtable. Thank you.
Now I call upon Robert Diarra, Special Counselor for the First Minister, Mali.
Merci bien, Monsieur le Président. Je remercie aussi pratiquement tous les intervenants au Présidium. Donc, nous voulons juste intervenir pour attirer un peu les attentions sur un certain nombre de préoccupations, donc qui peuvent être des préoccupations des paiements. Bon, j'étais vraiment à l'aise tout de suite parce que le constat qu'on a fait, je viens de voir que le ministre du Nigeria aussi dans sa présentation, parce que quand on prend la majorité des paiements, donc c'est pratiquement les pays africains. Donc ça c'est déjà une donnée qui est là. Donc les paiements majoritairement viennent de l'Afrique. Donc à ce niveau, nous pensons que la préoccupation fondamentale à ce niveau, je m'attendais à ce que le professeur d'université qui a intervenu, donc un peu de Genève, donc dans sa présentation parle un peu de cette préoccupation, mais je ne l'ai pas senti un peu, c'est la vulnérabilité du cadre macroéconomique, donc pratiquement des paiements. Les paiements ont un cadre macroéconomique très vulnérable. Quand je prends quand même ceux de l'Afrique, notamment le Mali, pratiquement, on voit que l'économie est basée sur l'agriculture, l'élevage et la pêche. Donc une économie agro-pastorale très liée aux aléas climatiques. Bon, avec les changements climatiques, donc les années où il pleut, la production agricole est là. Mais les années où il ne pleut pas, il n'y a pas de production. Donc il n'y a pas de maîtrise à ce niveau. Donc ça rend le cadre macroéconomique très vulnérable. Et je crois que beaucoup de paiements quand même sont dans cette situation. Donc quand on prend ce cas aussi, c'est vrai, la crise sanitaire Covid est venue tout exacerber. Donc pratiquement même les grandes puissances, les économies des grandes puissances ont senti cela. Mais nous estimons, pour aider quand même ces paiements, donc à améliorer leur situation, donc là, un peu dans le cadre des propositions, nous pensons quand même qu'il va falloir travailler un peu sur la chaîne de valeur. Parce que la transformation, et pour la transformation dans ces paiements, les questions énergétiques ne sont pas très souvent réglées. En plus des questions énergétiques, il y a aussi les questions des transports pour l'écoulement des produits. Là, juste un exemple, pour le cas du Mali, on a de ces zones, pratiquement, on a des fruits, beaucoup de fruits, mais pour les écouler d'abord sur la capitale, donc déjà les pistes, les routes ne sont pas bien adaptées. Et si les routes sont là aussi, donc les questions énergétiques pour leur conservation aussi posent problème. Donc voilà un peu, ça c'est des préoccupations réelles. Parce que pour atteindre le marché international, les produits, il faut bien les conserver, il faut que les normes soient respectées, notamment les normes phytosanitaires, parce que là, ça pose le problème d'accès au marché, avec déjà les normes qu'on fixe. Donc c'est un peu difficile pour beaucoup de paiements d'accéder vraiment au marché. Et c'est ce qui fait que les produits ou les matières premières quand même que nous disposons sont exportés à l'état brut. Il n'y a pas de chaîne de valeur, il n'y a pas de transformation. Donc la croissance est déplacée ailleurs. Et hier, ici même dans la présentation, on parlait déjà du chômage, on parlait déjà de la pyramide, il y a beaucoup de jeunes. Donc bientôt ce flux, comment quand même faire face à ce flux, comment employer, trouver de l'emploi pour ces flux-là. Donc là, il faut transformer. Mais cette transformation n'existe pas dans les paiements. Donc moi, je crois que c'est des préoccupations réelles. J'étais un peu quand même triste quand je vois un peu la part des paiements donc dans les échanges donc, commerciaux, 0,7% au cours des dernières décennies. J'avoue, ça interpelle tout le monde. Ça interpelle les paiements, mais ça interpelle aussi donc même les puissances par rapport aux aides qu'ils apportent à ces paiements. Donc moi, je crois que ces aides doivent être bien orientées en ce sens pour que ça puisse financer carrément le développement. Mais là, on constate aussi que même les aides qui viennent très souvent sont beaucoup plus politiques. Beaucoup plus politique, il y a beaucoup d'études quand même donc, qui font apparaître cela. Les aides ne sont pas orientées dans le sens du vrai développement, mais c'est des aides qui sont données dans le cadre des questions politiques souvent. Bon, et orientées vers des secteurs ciblés, vers des secteurs qui n'ont rien à voir avec le développement. Donc ça pose aussi ce problème-là. Moi, je crois que juste en termes de propositions, ce que je voulais dire, il faut encourager carrément donc, les chaînes de valeur, la transformation au niveau local, mais il faudrait que les grandes puissances aussi aident ces paiements à régler les questions énergétiques aussi. C'est très important. Sans énergie, sans électricité, j'avoue, la transformation pose de sérieux problèmes. Donc voilà un peu, en tout cas, ce que nous voulons faire. Au sortir quand même de cette discussion, qu'on note vraiment la vulnérabilité du cadre macroéconomique, donc des paiements, et qui sont là aussi du fait du changement climatique. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup. Now I give the floor to my fellow co-chair for her remarks.
Thank you very much. We have just heard the last speaker in this roundtable. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, let me begin by thanking my co-chair and all participants of this roundtable for interesting and important contributions and commitments that they have made today. At this point, I would like to make some closing remarks concerning our deliberations. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, and all the panelists, we have almost reached the conclusion of this high-level discussion. Many valuable suggestions and policy options are put forward for enhancing participation of graduating and graduated LDCs in the regional and international trade. The panelists, discussants, and participants have stressed the importance of enhancing connectivity, improving logistics, maintaining preferential market access, promoting export diversification, and addressing climate vulnerability. I would like to highlight that transition financing would be instrumental for graduating and graduated LDCs for securing sustainable graduation with momentum. It is crucial that the international community makes a concrete, predictable commitment to the successful implementation of the Doha Program of Actions. By working together through a strong global partnership, we can realize the aspirations of LDCs and create a better future for everyone, especially for our future generation. Thank you, everyone, for your active participation in this engaging discussion. Thank you all. Now I give the floor to my fellow co-chair for concluding remarks and close.
Thank you, Madame. Excellences, Mesdames les représentantes, Messieurs les représentants, Mesdames, Messieurs, il est évident que si les exportations de marchandises et de paiements continuent de croître au rythme enregistré au cours de la dernière décennie, il est peu probable que nous atteignions l'objectif de doubler la part des exportations mondiales de paiements au cours de la prochaine décennie. Les paiements continuent d'être confrontés à de multiples défis, comme l'ont souligné nos éminents panélistes et d'autres intervenants. Il est toutefois encourageant de constater que ces défis ne sont pas insurmontables. Il y a des raisons d'espérer, bien que les défis demeurent certains progrès ont été réalisés dans la mise en place de mesures visant à créer un environnement favorable à l'intégration des paiements dans le commerce mondial. Sur le plan politique, nous avons appris que les paiements bénéficient d'un accès préférentiel au marché des principaux partenaires commerciaux avec des exigences améliorées en matière de règles d'origine, entre autres. Plus récemment, les membres de l'OMC ont prolongé la période de transition de paiement pour mettre pleinement en œuvre l'accord sur les ADPSC. Les discussions que nous avons eues ce matin nous ont permis de constater qu'il faut faire davantage et que toutes les parties prenantes sont essentielles pour atteindre les objectifs que nous nous sommes fixés dans le programme d'action de Doha et dans le programme 2030 pour le développement durable. Bien que des politiques aient été mises en place, l'opérationnalisation de ces politiques et engagements reste un défi. Plusieurs intervenants ont appelé à la mise en œuvre des engagements pris au fil des ans en faveur des membres les plus vulnérables de l'Organisation mondiale du commerce. Un certain nombre de pays sortent de la liste des paiements. Il est d'une importance vitale de poursuivre le soutien au commerce spécifique, au paiement, pour les pays retirés de la liste afin de garantir la durabilité de leurs économies. Ainsi, Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, le résumé de nos délibérations sera présenté à la séance plénière de clôture de la conférence qui se tiendra le jeudi 9 mars dans l'après-midi et il figure dans le rapport final de la conférence. Nous sommes ainsi arrivés au terme de cette table ronde thématique de haut niveau. La séance est levée. Je vous remercie. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you.
Dan moet ik op het podium.